So we're going to go from there. That's where we're going from. And you want to find the antithesis or the antagonist to your criminal record. So you say, well, what are you talking about, Todd? We're going to go from what you just said. That's your thesis statement right now. Your thesis statement is my criminal record is killing me.
Thank you for being here.
We're going to take that as true. We're going to use that logic,
the great men and women
graph,
of law enforcement
P and
have been working
Q,
on this operation
all that. We're going to say that's true.
And days and probably weeks. Early this morning, one of the top leaders of MS-13 was apprehended. He was the leader for the East Coast, one of the top 3 in the entire country. Right here in Virginia, living half an hour outside of Washington, D.C. He is an illegal alien from El Salvador, and he will not be living in our country much longer. He's in custody this morning. One of the top leaders right here near our nation's capital. I just cannot thank Governor Youngkin enough for his leadership in this effort. This has been a joint effort with state and local agencies. FBI Director Patel, thank you so much. Terry Cole, Virginia Secretary of Public Safety, our U.S. Attorney, Eric Siebert, DHS Secretary Noem, of course, who is in El Salvador, the home country currently of our illegal alien. DEA Acting Director Maltz, thank you. Our U.S. Marshals Service, ATF, all of the members of our task force who have been working tirelessly. We were out at that scene this morning, and what we saw was second to none. Teamwork, everyone working together. You know, someone made a great point, no egos. It was a team. You could not tell who was with what agency. Everyone was working as a team. And the most important thing, all of our agents were safe this morning, all of our law enforcement officers, and the bad guy is in jail. That's what matters. That's what happened. America is safer today because of one of the top domestic terrorists in MS-13. He is off the streets. This has been an ongoing directive of President Trump. His directive to me when I became Attorney General of the United States was very simple. Keep America safe. Make America safe again. And that's what these men and women have been doing tirelessly every single day since Donald Trump took office. We want to make our streets safer. We want to make our schools safer. We want to make your neighborhood safer. This guy was living in a neighborhood right around you. No longer, thanks to the great men and women of law enforcement. This task force that we have created is remarkable, using incredible technology that we will not discuss to catch and apprehend these horrible, violent, worst of the worst criminals. MS-13, they are organized, they are violent, they are committing homicides throughout our country. They are one of the most dangerous gangs in our country, and we are going to fight until they are completely dismantled. What I want to do, I want to have other governors, other law enforcement officers come here to Virginia and see this amazing task force, Governor, that is led by our agencies and Governor Youngkin. And what's happening here in Virginia? Arrests have increased 468% from the same period last year. We didn't need new laws, as President Trump always said. We needed a new president. And we have great leadership standing behind him to fight to keep America safe and make America safe again. We will keep your community safe, and we will continue to do that. It is my honor to introduce to you your Governor, Glenn Youngkin.
Thank you so much. Thank you, and welcome to Virginia. What this task force over the course of the last 4 weeks represents is the model of federal resources, stately resources, and local resources coming together in order to eradicate the drug and terrorist networks that exist. And I use the word terrorist because the illegal drug gangs, MS-13, Tren de Aragua, they are international terrorist organizations. And they are resident right here. They're resident across the country. And it requires this kind of task force, this collaboration of Virginia resources, our great Virginia State Police led by Colonel Hanley, our Department of Corrections led by Judge Chad Dotson, along with our leadership at the administration level led by Secretary Terry Cole and our Attorney General Jason Miyares, to come together with tremendous resources from the federal government. And systematically over the last 4 weeks, we have gone to work untangling, gone to work putting together the cases and arresting these horrific criminals, these criminals that live in our neighborhoods. The arrest this morning was in Dale City in Prince William County, right here in Northern Virginia, one of the best areas in America. And it was one of the top leaders of MS-13 living here, an illegal immigrant, and that illegal immigrant's going to go back to where he came from. But most importantly, it's this effort that has been enabled by the Trump administration. President Trump said, get the bad guys. I've been working on this literally for the first 3 years of our administration with little to no help from the senior leadership in the federal government and the Biden administration. On day one, we went to work signing a 287G memorandum. It took us 20 hours to get it done. I was able to deputize our state police and our Department of Correction members to go to work in this task force. I want to thank General Bondi. From the second she assumed her position, she was here with us. I want to thank Director Patel. From the second he assumed his position, he was here with us. Resources, capabilities. But I most importantly want to thank the men and women who every day put their lives on the line. These folks go to work with a bulletproof vest on, and they so rarely have anyone say thank you. And today, they deserve a huge thank you, but they deserve a thank you every single day. Over the last 4 weeks, 340 horrific criminals have been arrested here in Northern Virginia. And that allows me to make one last comment. Local jurisdictions that claim sanctuary city status are absolutely unacceptable. Look who's in your community. Look who's living around the corner from citizens that are going to work, trying to build their lives in a place that's the best place in America to live and work and raise a family. And yet we have one of the top 3 operatives from the most dangerous gang in America and the world living around the corner, and you sanctuary cities want to give refuge to them. Listen, it's time for us to recognize that Virginia is not a sanctuary state. We are working to get the bad guys out of here. And if you are a local jurisdiction and not helping us and not cooperating with us, you are working against the safety of all of those men and women that call your jurisdiction home. This task force is a sustainable effort, not a one and done. And that is the most impactful part of it. We get to continue to work together to, yes, General Bondi, make America safe again and make Virginia the safest state in America. I just want to thank everyone for their tremendous efforts. And now I want to hand it over to the U.S. Attorney of Virginia's Eastern District, Eric Siebert.
Thank you, Governor. On March 3rd, we officially launched the operations as part of this Homeland Security Task Force. And this is first of its kind in the nation. It's interagency, which makes it unique. And it combines federal, state, and local resources to identify and arrest the most violent gang offenders in the Eastern District of Virginia. So working with our partners of all 4 divisions in the Eastern District of Virginia, we have created an intelligence-based model. And that's the focus, is intelligence-based, that drives this moving forward. So we can focus our attention on the transnational organized groups, such as MS-13, that have long plagued our communities. So in less than a month, we have identified 575 targets. We've arrested 342 of those targets, many of them with illegal status. And of the 342 arrested, we've identified 81 individuals with gang or transnational crime affiliation. The Eastern District of Virginia U.S. Attorney's Office has already done 73 federal criminal complaints charging these individuals. And between federal and state partners, we've obtained and executed 39 search warrants. We're already hearing in the community that our efforts are having a deterrent effect on these gangs. And so moving forward with the information that we've obtained from our arrests and search warrants, we plan to use the task force model to continue to identify these bad actors and prioritize the rest of the most violent transnational criminals. I want to thank Attorney General Bondi, Governor Youngkin, FBI Director Patel, DA Administrator Waltz, and Secretary Cole for your trust on this and support of this Virginia task force. And I also want to thank the hard work of the agents and the special agents of Virginia State Police and the federal agents, and also the AUSAs. My prosecutors have been working around the clock to support this task force. And despite the tremendous success of this task force, I want the public to know this is just the beginning of our efforts. We have a sense of urgency on this, and we do not plan on stopping until every one of these violent gang members is off the streets. And to the criminals, I just have to say, we're coming. So at this time, I'd like to turn this over to FBI Director Patel.
This is what happens when you let good cops be cops. And we're going to continue to let good cops be cops across this country. President Trump gave us the executive decision to go after and safeguard our communities. General Bondi is our warrior of justice leading that charge. Governor Youngkin, it's an honor to be a partner in this operation with you and U.S. Attorney Siebert. This is the mandate we have. Right now we have an American dying every 7 minutes from a drug overdose. That is a national security crisis we have not seen ever before. We have a woman or child being raped every 6.5 minutes in this country. We have a homicide twice an hour. No part of that metric is a safe and secure America. But thanks to the brave leadership of this administration and the folks that you see here, we are returning our communities to safety. As you heard, we took down this morning a top leader of MS-13. That is not done easily. That is done with brilliant law enforcement. And right here, I'm proud, and I think the governor knows I'm biased, having graduated from the University of Richmond, to have this here in the state of Virginia, here in our Northern Virginia resident agency, with our partnership with our Washington field office and our special agents, our SOS folks, our intel analysts, and our support staff. My priority has been law enforcement across the country, and that will not change. But law enforcement across the country cannot be done just by Washington, D.C. and the federal government alone. This task force was stood up 1 month ago. In 1 month, the brave men and women on this task force from state, local, and federal authorities have arrested 342 criminals in the state of Virginia alone. We wanted this to be a successful model. It is a successful model because of you, because of your men and women on the streets. We have the easy job in Washington, D.C. You take it to the max every single day. You put your safety on the line. You put your selfless desires ahead of going home and seeing your families at night because you care more about safeguarding our schools and our community than you do your own safety. So we will always have the backs of good cops because you have the backs of the American people. And this task force is going to go everywhere it is needed across the United States to bring the form of justice and measured security and safety that our American citizens deserve. It is an America First model because we live in the United States of America. And if you are here illegally, you will not be here any longer. And if you are going to continue to commit acts of violent crime, you will meet the same fate that this individual did this morning. And I just want to reiterate what our partners said behind us. This is not possible without the folks that do the job every single day. And as director of the FBI, it is a privilege to lead some of these brave men and women. And the only ask that I have of you in the community is the next time you see a cop, thank them. The next time you see someone safeguarding our schools, shake their hand. The next time you see our brave men and women of the FBI and the local and federal state police take down a violent terrorist, maybe give them a hug. Because those guys, those gals are the ones that are going to continue to keep our city safe. And we will not stop until this national security crisis is recognized, brought into check, and eliminated. Thank you.
Questions?
Amber from the Daily Caller.
Thanks.
Hey, Amber.
First question is, how long was this individual living in the United States illegally and operating as a leader of MS-13? And then two, MS-13 has been a huge problem in Virginia for several years now. How many members of that gang do you believe are currently operating in the state?
The bottom line is for far too long. And because of operational security, we won't get into too many of the details about this individual. But if you're here for a minute, a day, a month, or a year, you've been here far too long. And General Bondi has made it a priority at this FBI that we manhunt every single person committing an act of violent crime.
And it should speak volumes that the leader for the entire East Coast was living right here in Virginia, right among us. Question? Oh, did you want to add something?
Can I just
Governor
add
wants to
that?
add
I'm
something.
sorry. I just want to reiterate that, first of all, President Trump's executive order declaring the drug gangs and cartels international terrorists is critical underpinning to the work today. Second of all, the collaboration now that's available because we have a 287G memorandum in place is critical. And it allows us then to bring the intelligence together to go pursue and arrest someone like this. And I just want to reiterate again, this is new. And the capabilities that are being displayed right now are capabilities that are now available not just to Virginia, but to the rest of the country because of the administration's forward-leaning vision on how to use state and federal resources in collaboration in a way that has not been done. I have to say, Terry Cole has been leading our efforts in the Commonwealth brilliantly, but until we were able to bring in the federal resources in this way, bringing down somebody like this would not really have been possible.
And Governor Youngkin and I, once again, are going to offer this to every governor in our country. Let's see who takes us up on this to keep their states safe. Questions?
I have been here, I mean, there's hundreds of these arrests happening so quickly. Have these individuals been identified under the Biden administration? I mean, was there a paper trail of these people? Were they all identified and targeted with the Trump administration in place? And then I also wanted to hear from the governor, too, on Fairfax County. We have heard in recent years issues about the sanctuary policies there, people who are dangerous, illegal aliens, suspected, being set free from the communities and then committing other crimes. So I'm curious what we do from there.
So first, many had been identified. They had been living here. Many had been identified. Living here, they were let freely into our country. All of these illegal aliens. I had gone to that border in September. Nothing humane was happening at that border. Passports stacked everywhere, everywhere, from every country you can imagine. People freely walking across our borders, fighting age men coming into our country. And this is the result of Joe Biden's open border policy. What our country has been plagued with. But from the second Donald Trump took office, he said he is going to make America safe. He shut down our borders, and now it's our job to get these people out of our country as fast as we can. And this coordinated group effort, this task force that has been put together, is making a difference here, and it will make a difference around the country. That's why you're seeing so many arrests so fast, because we will not have another Lake and Riley. We are going to catch them, we are going to apprehend them, and they are not going to like where they are going. Governor Youngkin, did you want to answer the second part?
Thank you very much. First and foremost, this task force was designed in the White House with this team around the table. What do we need to do in order to go after the gangs, the cartels, and, of course, the drugs in a community like Northern Virginia, like Fairfax County, that has seen county leadership not pursue the necessary steps in order to fight this crime? And this task force was architected in a very quick period of time and stood up immediately. And in fact, when Director Patel was confirmed, within a day, he authorized this facility and these capabilities. General Bondi immediately came to lead it, and we found ourselves with truly one-of-a-kind resources going to work. And I just want to emphasize the pace and the focus. And so, no, these were not lists that were available in the previous administration because they wouldn't do that. And the minute that we had partners that would do this with us, then lists of 500, 600, 700 targets could be put together in collaboration with state police and federal authorities and our Department of Corrections. Critically important, and I cannot emphasize enough the collaboration and support and leadership out of the new administration that is so different than what we saw in at least the previous 3 years of my administration. Finally, with regards to counties that are demonstrating resistance to cooperate with federal authorities and particularly with ICE. This is why I have put in a budget amendment in our budget that if they're not going to cooperate with ICE, then we will withhold funding. Now, I need a General Assembly to vote for this. And I need a bunch of Democrats to step up and say, hey, we believe in public safety and we're going to hold jurisdictions accountable. And with this budget amendment, we can then hold Fairfax County accountable. But I'm also asking for help from our federal partners to make sure that jurisdictions that are not cooperating with ICE, we can in fact step in. And that's why the 287G memorandum that we have signed with the federal government is so important. It allows me to deputize our state police and our Department of Corrections folks, and we can then step in and make sure that we're taking custody of these folks and handing them over to ICE to be deported. This is critically important. We're not backing off. And I do believe there's an invitation here. There's an invitation for everyone to come together and recognize that criminals, literally one of the top operatives in MS-13 is in a community that would have never thought they were there. And if we continue to have sanctuary city philosophies, that's where they're going to go. And I don't believe any community in Virginia wants someone like this living in their community. And that's why it's so important that we come together, put down all the politics, and work together in order to make America safe again. Thank you.
One more question.
We've got time for one more. Pierre, ABC.
General Bondi, good morning.
Yeah.
I have one question on topic and one question off topic. Can someone
Of course you have to go off topic.
Question number one, can someone describe what this suspect's role was in MS-13 in terms of what kind of activity was he overseeing?
All we're saying now, for certain reasons, we're not identifying him by name. He was one of the top members, top 3 in the entire country, head of the East Coast, one of the 3 leaders, and I will say very violent crimes. Anything you can associate with MS-13, he was the leader over it. All of the violent crimes. So he's very dangerous. He should not have been in this country. He's from El Salvador, and he was recruited at a very early age. And it rose to the leadership, and you have to be bad, you have to be tough to get there. But he is no longer tough because he is behind bars.
The off-topic question, in terms of the signals chat controversy that's going on, is DOJ involved at this point? If so, why? If not, why not?
Well, first, it was sensitive information, not classified, and inadvertently released. And what we should be talking about is it was a very successful mission. Our world is now safer because of that mission. We're not going to comment any further on that. If you want to talk about classified information, talk about what was at Hillary Clinton's home that she was trying to bleach bit. Talk about the classified documents in Joe Biden's garage that Hunter Biden had access to. This was not classified information. And we are very pleased with the results of that operation and that the entire world is safer because of it. Thank you all very much. Thank you for coming here and reporting.
Good? Wait, hang on one second. Hey, Terry, can you come up here?
President Trump is also advancing his peace through strength policy with airstrikes and diplomacy. We are speaking with Medal of Honor recipient David Bellavita on the latest overseas. But first, we begin with Madeline Rivera live in Washington.
Report on the numerous accounts of Democrats making the same gesture.
Joining me now is NBC News senior national security correspondent Courtney Cubie. Courtney, the reaction on...
Well, moments ago, a federal appeals court panel heard arguments regarding the Trump administration's use of a wartime law to deport undocumented Venezuelan immigrants to an El Salvador prison. The case has sparked debate over whether the Trump administration violated a court order halting those deportation flights. CBS News Department of Justice reporter Jake Rosen joins us now. You've been following this story very closely, Jake. What did we learn in court today?
Well, that's right. I just got back from the courtroom where this argument was underway. There were two conservative-appointed judges, and there was one Democrat-appointed judge in this case in a three-judge panel, which basically it was just a lightning round of asking questions at these attorneys. It started off with the Department of Justice saying that they felt that this case was actually filed in the wrong venue, and that because the plaintiffs, the 5 original people who sued to block their deportation before Judge James Boasberg, expanded it to fit anyone who would fit under this Trump proclamation of the Alien Enemies Act, that those people are in Texas, and a suit needs to be filed in Texas to basically adjudicate the rest of these claims. The ACLU attorney basically argued that they're not even sure how many alleged Tren de Aragua members or people who are subject of this executive action are actually in the United States, how many of them are in Texas, how many of them are in other states. And by that logic, right, it's very hard for the plaintiffs who are suing in this case, the ACLU, to represent their clients when the government is not telling them where exactly everyone is so that these cases could be pursued locally there. One judge was very skeptical of the Department of Justice's argument that basically the President Trump has sweeping power in this case, basically saying that you can exact and put into place the Alien Enemies Act, but you cannot assume that we will not ask questions about it, and we need to make sure as a court that everyone who is actually being deported to countries like El Salvador are actually gang members. The Department of Justice basically said they, again, still believe that he has sweeping presidential authority. There will likely be no decision today, although all 3 judges said that they wanted something expediently so that this can either go to the Supreme Court or be challenged in other ways going forward.
So what's the next step in the legal process for all of this?
Well, down a rung on the court in Judge Boasberg's court, tomorrow the government has due a report and a brief to him on why they did not turn those planes around. And that's, again, a critical part of what you just mentioned of why we even are at this point right now, is because the government did not turn those planes around despite his verbal order. He said he wants a briefing from the government tomorrow, and then by Friday from the plaintiffs, basically explaining each side in the case, and to go down potentially whether he would find the government in contempt of court for not turning those planes around. And we'll see what else comes out of this circuit court. I would expect a ruling soon. They seem to imply, as everyone is aware in this case, that just holding people and potentially the government want to rush.
We've got some breaking news to share with you. A federal judge has denied the Justice Department's bid to lift the block on the president's Alien Enemies Act order. The Trump administration invoked the act to deport hundreds of Venezuelan nationals to El Salvador more than a week ago. CBS News immigration and politics reporter Camilo Montoya Galvez has been following this closely, and he joins me now with more on the breaking news. So, Camilo, what can you tell us?
Well, now we know that the Trump administration, Vlad, for the time being, will continue to be blocked from citing the Alien Enemies Act of 1798 to deport suspected members of the Tren de Aragua Venezuelan prison gang. This is obviously a big decision by the judge in federal district court in D.C., but there is a hearing today on the administration's appeal of his order, so we'll stay tuned on that too. This is really important, though, because his ruling did also include an argument by the judge that the ACLU and the plaintiffs in this case are likely to prevail in arguing, Vlad, that at the very least, these people who are being accused of gang membership should receive an individual and individualized hearing to actually determine whether they are part of this gang. And we talked about that question of due process, and so the judge is saying, Vlad, that at the very least, the government has to give these people due process before summarily deporting them from the country.
All right, let's talk about the more than 500,000 protections for Cubans and Haitians that were revoked. What are you hearing about that?
This is a major policy change by the Trump administration. Officials are now telling more than 500,000 people from Cuba, Haiti, Nicaragua, and Venezuela who came to the U.S. legally under a sponsorship process created by the Biden administration that they have 30 days to pack their bags, to self-register for self-deportation on a smartphone app created by the government, and leave the country voluntarily. If not, the Department of Homeland Security, Vlad, is warning that they will be found arrested and deported from the country. And in 30 days, their deportation protections and work permits will expire. These people, again, came to the U.S. legally and right now have legal status, but in the next 30 days, unless a federal court intervenes, they will become part of the undocumented population.
Wow. All right. Let me switch gears and ask you about the case of the Columbia University student activist Mahmoud Khalil. There's a new allegation that he's facing. What is it?
The Justice Department is now accusing Mr. Khalil of essentially orchestrating immigration.
Right now, the Trump administration is revoking the legal status of more than 500,000 immigrants from Cuba, Haiti, Nicaragua, and Venezuela, all who came to the United States legally under a temporary protected status. It's something directly impacting our area, as the greater Pittsburgh area has seen an influx of Haitian residents over the past year. KDKA's Ricky Sayer is in Charleroi, where he spoke with an immigration lawyer about the impacts there.
The immigration attorney we spoke with said this executive order is a recipe for disaster in this community. Now, some members of this community have argued that it has seen a turnaround for the best due to the influx of immigrants, while others have argued the opposite. The Haitian immigrant sitting across from this lawyer has already faced a major obstacle in his life.
He was a pastor, and he found himself being terrorized by Haitian gangs who are notoriously hostile to Christianity.
His latest obstacle, the program that brought him to America, is ending in August, with his temporary legal status ending along with it.
Well, he obviously very upset. He's come down here today.
Attorney Joseph Patrick Murphy says many immigrants are worried.
They're going to have to find some other way of being legal, go home, or try and stay under the radar and kind of just live in the shadows.
He says the explosive population growth Charleroi has seen was primarily caused by the program that's ending. Murphy says as the result of the executive order, the town could lose 800 to 1,000 workers. They work at businesses like 4th Street Foods, which has struggled to find Americans to fill roles.
Or if they all left, you have 800 or 1,000 rents that stop being paid. You have 800 or 1,000 gas tanks that aren't being filled, groceries that aren't being bought. It would be rough on this town. I suspect that there will be pain here in this town.
Washington County Republican Party chairperson Ashley Duff says pain was already felt.
The residents didn't ask to have all of the immigrants put in this town, and I feel like with Secretary Noem's new directive that they're going to feel a lot of relief.
She says from what she's heard, the immigrants in the program were loosely vetted and that it undercut American workers. As for the potential negative impacts on the community,
yeah, we believe that the people of Charleroi are strong, resilient people, and that they're going to want to see their community thrive, and they're going to be able to come back from any hurt that may be felt.
Murphy does expect the immediate impact will be tempered, saying about 1/3 of immigrants should be able to apply for asylum, including the immigrant we saw him working with.
And ultimately, I think he's got a winner on his hands.
Critics of the protective status designation have argued its renewal has effectively become automatic over the years. Murphy says that's an open secret for programs like it. He also says that Charleroi has handled the influx of immigrants better than any other community he's worked in. In Charleroi, Washington County, Ricky Sayer, KDK TV News.
As efforts to combat the fentanyl crisis show signs of progress, a new challenge is emerging at our nation's southern border: cocaine, and now making a significant comeback. Reports indicating a dramatic surge in its production throughout South America, and now the surge is being felt at the U.S.-Mexico border, with authorities reporting larger and more frequent seizures. News Nation's Jorge Ventura is here now with the very latest. You've been tracking this surge. Tell us more about what authorities are seeing at the border right now.
Yeah, Anna, this is really fascinating. Right now, U.S. authorities say that overdose deaths tied to fentanyl are...
This just in, editor-in-chief of The Atlantic, Jeffrey Goldberg, says he was accidentally texted war plans.
Yeah, we literally just received this piece from The Atlantic, and in it, Goldberg writes, U.S. national security leaders included me in a group chat about upcoming military strikes in Yemen. I didn't think it could be real. Then the bombs started falling. CNN's Alex Marquardt joins us now live. And Alex, this piece came out literally in the last few minutes. I haven't been able to read through all of it, but this seems like something out of a farce, like out of a comedy.
It is just stunning on so many different levels. And I understand why Goldberg didn't believe it was real, because it is just shocking in several different ways. Goldberg was added to a Signal chat with some of the most senior national security members of the Trump administration. Signal is a messaging app that is encrypted, probably why these officials thought that they could have a discreet conversation on there. But on it, in this chat that Goldberg was a witness to, they talk about the planning for the recent bombing of the Houthis that started on March 15th. They talk about current intelligence assessments. There's a full-on debate among these officials about whether they should carry out this bombing of the Houthis. And these are conversations that could be in violation of the Espionage Act. Now, this group was started, it looks like, by the National Security Advisor Mike Waltz, who called it the Houthi PC Small Group. PC refers to Principals Committee. The principals in the administration are the senior-most officials. And among that group of senior officials, you have the National Security Advisor, the Vice President, the Secretary of Defense and of State, the Director of National Intelligence, the CIA Director, Steve Witkoff, the Special Envoy, the Chief of Staff to President Trump, and the list goes on. There are 18 of them. So there's this debate over whether the U.S. should go through with this bombing of the Houthis. Vice President Vance is actually arguing against it, saying that just 3% of trade goes through the Red Sea, which is where the ships have been targeted by the Houthis. Ratcliffe, the CIA director, he chimes in with current intelligence assessments that may be related to intelligence operations that are ongoing. Goldberg does not print that because, of course, that, among so many other details in this, are so highly classified. Hegseth, the Secretary of Defense, he chimes in saying that waiting a few weeks or a month wouldn't fundamentally change the calculus. And he notes, interestingly, that if this leaks, we look indecisive. Of course, it would eventually leak. Now, keep in mind, as they're having this discussion, Goldberg is watching all of this unfold, and he doesn't know, again, whether it's real, but he would quickly learn that it was. On the morning of March 15th, which is the day the bombings began, Hegseth, the Secretary of Defense, posted a team update at 11:44 in the morning saying the bombings were about to start 2 hours later. And in that message to this large group, again, including Goldberg, he posted operational details about these strikes that were about to happen, information about targets, about weapons, and the attack sequencing. 2 hours later, the strikes started. Goldberg looked up on Twitter, and he started to see explosions happening in Yemen, and that's when he knew it was true. And that's when these officials essentially started celebrating. You have John Ratcliffe, the CIA director, saying, "A good start." Mike Waltz, this National Security Advisor, responds with several emojis, as does Steve Witkoff, with two hands praying, a flexed bicep, and two American flags. So everyone approving of what just happened and celebrating. The National Security Council has not pushed back on this at all. They said that this chain was in fact real. Brian Hughes, the National Security Council spokesman, says this does appear to be an authentic message chain. They are looking into how and someone was inadvertently added, how Goldberg was added to this chain, and he tries to spin it as a demonstration of the deep and thoughtful policy coordination between senior officials. So no pushback from the White House in terms of the authenticity of this. But again, this may violate the Espionage Act. Jeffrey Goldberg and his colleague Shane Harris, who's an intelligence reporter, spoke with several lawyers who say that it may have violated the provisions that govern the handling of national defense information. Bottom line, they say,
to put it on Signal,
they should not have established a Signal chat in the first place, is their conclusion, which is kind of obvious. And then the kicker of this whole piece is, as Hegseth is describing how this is going to unfold and what is going to happen, he says, we are currently clean on OPSEC, which is operational security. Clearly, they were not clean because they included a journalist in this conversation on Signal.
Okay, who was the JG who was missing, who should have been part of the conversation?
We don't know why Waltz initially reached out to Jeffrey Goldberg and added him as a contact and then eventually added him to the group. You're absolutely right. They probably thought they were adding someone else from within the administration who had a similar name. Why this mistake happened is just the first of a very long list of questions.
Wow.
Alex Marquardt, thank you so much for bringing us this reporting. Let's talk more about this with former Defense Secretary and former CIA Director Leon Panetta. Secretary, I'm reading the piece as we speak, and it's interesting because Goldberg writes that he had very strong doubts that this text group was real. I could not believe that the national security leadership of the United States would communicate on Signal about imminent war plans. I also could not believe that the national security advisor to the president would be so reckless, he writes, as to include the editor-in-chief of The Atlantic in such discussions with senior U.S. officials. Secretary, what's your reaction to this reporting?
Well, it's obviously a very serious mistake on the part of whoever included Goldberg in this highly classified chain of command messaging that went on that involved war plans. To have had somebody from the Atlantic on that chain, without question, was a serious mistake. And I hope the White House takes this seriously, because the last thing you want to do when you're talking about war plans is to have a serious leak like this that could undermine the war plans, but also jeopardize lives. So I hope they take this seriously.
What would that look like, Secretary?
I think they would have to do a full investigation as to who included this name on that chain involving the highest officials in national security, from the president to the vice president to a secretary of defense, et cetera.
The exploding
How the name of a journalist was added to that list. This is just a serious blunder, and not only could violate the espionage laws, but more importantly, can undermine our national security. That's probably the greater problem, is that it reveals our most secret war plans that require that we protect that information in order to be able to conduct what is obviously a serious operation of war.
To that point, Secretary, I wonder what could have happened here.
I have to ask the Democrats why.
If it wasn't Jeffrey Goldberg, the editor-in-chief at The Atlantic, who received this and decided to publish this story, if it had been someone else on the contact list that was added to the Signal chat, what would have been a worst-case scenario that would have put national security at risk?
Well, the worst-case scenario, I mean, thankfully, Jeffrey Goldberg just assumed that this was either a joke or some kind of mistake, and obviously didn't pay attention. But somebody who would have
Representative
the United States as an adversary could reveal this information immediately to the Houthis in Yemen, that they were about to be attacked. And they, in turn, could have responded and attacked U.S. facilities in the Red Sea, causing casualties of our troops.
The exploding security scandal engulfing the Trump administration. It's only two
attack and a mistake. This reckless action undid the designation put in place by President Trump and other key leaders. We also destroyed command flagged vessels hoax to help Joe Biden in now add this Signal hoax to this video. By peddling a hoax about President Trump involving Gold Star families to help Kamala Harris in the 2024 election, which our campaign at the time vigorously denied, Jeffrey Goldberg didn't care. There's more, but we don't have all day, and we can now add this Signal hoax to this very long list. The real story here is the overwhelming success of President Trump's decisive military action against Houthi terrorists. On March 15th, President Trump ordered a series of military operations against the terrorist Houthis to defend U.S. shipping assets in the Red Sea, restore freedom of navigation for international shipping, and defend the United States from enemy threats. United States forces successfully struck dozens of targets across Houthi-controlled territory. And as a result of these actions, several Houthi leaders were killed, including the Houthi drone chief, his deputy, and several of their drone experts and other key leaders. We also destroyed command and controlled facilities, weapons manufacturing facilities, and advanced weapons storage locations. And it's important to remember why this powerful action took place in the first place. Because of Joe Biden's incompetence and pathetic weakness on the world stage for years, the Houthi terrorists grew emboldened. Immediately after taking office in 2021, Joe Biden removed the Iran-backed Houthis from the foreign terrorist organization and specifically designated global terrorist list. Did anybody in this room ask the Biden administration at the time why they made such a stupid mistake? This reckless action undid the designation put in place by President Trump during his first term, and what followed was predictable and devastating. The Houthis targeted U.S. military ships and aircraft, hit commercial ships, including U.S.-flagged vessels, threatened our personnel overseas, and attacked our allies in the region. This resulted in more than a year of U.S.-flagged commercial ships being prevented from safely sailing through the Suez Canal, the Red Sea, and the Gulf of Aden. This had a massive negative impact on global trade of the economic security of the United States. Joe Biden was the commander-in-chief, and he sat on his hands while the United States of America was bullied and embarrassed by terrorists. President Trump and his team are putting a stop to these threats and restoring American strength around the world. The Trump peace through strength approach means no terrorist force will stop American commercial and naval vessels from freely sailing the waterways of the world. But unfortunately, this is not what the Democrats and the media want to talk about. They are focused on a coordinated campaign to try and sow chaos in this White House. And this has been the most successful first 2 months of any administration ever, which is exactly why they are doing this. We are not going to bend in the face of this insincere outrage. And here's just one example of how bad faith the Democrats' criticisms are. Democrat Senator Mark Warner is hysterical over the use of Signal, which is an approved decrypted app, and the killing of Houthi terrorists. But Senator Warner himself used Signal to work with a lobbyist for a Russian oligarch to connect with the disgraced Steele dossier author who started the Russia hoax, which Jeffrey Goldberg later reported on. How ironic. We're not going to lose focus of the bottom line, which is that Joe Biden's weakness enabled and emboldened Houthi terrorists, and President Trump's strength and resolve eliminated those terrorists. Here in our new media seat today, we have Lindsay Keith. She is the managing editor for Merit TV and serves as their White House correspondent. Merit TV launched 1 year ago and creates and distributes content across diverse platforms. We're glad to have you with us, Lindsay. Please kick us off.
Karoline, I appreciate it and this opportunity for Merit TV. Two questions, if I may. One on Signal, one on the economy. Sure. On Signal, how comfortable is the president with what was shared so far now that the chain has been released?
The president's view on all of this remains the same today as it did yesterday. And I think it speaks volumes about the leadership of this president that he went directly to all of you, members of the press corps. He was asked, do you want someone else to go out and do a briefing? And he said, no, I will tackle this story. I will discuss it. The people need to hear from me about the situation. And so his thoughts on this remained the same today. He has placed great trust in his national security team. And as for the usage of Signal, as the president said yesterday, as the CIA director has testified under oath, this is an approved app. It's an encrypted app. The Department of Defense, the Department of State, the CIA has it loaded onto government phones because it is the most secure and efficient way to communicate. As for, again, the original situation in this messaging thread, the National Security Council, the White House counsel's office continues to look in to how this mistake, which the National Security Advisor has owned, occurred, and the president has ensured they are doing that.
On the economy, consumer confidence hit a 4-year low this month. Can you help explain to the American people how tariffs will help them in the long run?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm grateful for the question. The American public will hear later this afternoon from the president directly on the topic of tariffs. And as you all know, April 2nd day, President Trump has proudly dubbed it Liberation Day for our country. What he means by that is it will be a day where the United States of America will no longer be ripped off by nations around this world. It will be a day where Americans finally see free and fair trade practices restored. We are no longer going to allow our allies, our competitors, and our adversaries to take advantage of American workers. And if you think about your hometown in the state that you grew up, Main Street looks a lot different today than it did many years ago. And President Trump wants to restore America as a manufacturing superpower around the globe. He wants products to be made right here in our great country with great, hardworking American hands that will ultimately result in higher wages and more money in the pockets of the American people. And he's also, in addition to tariffs, also determined to pass tax cuts later this year, as he did successfully in his first term, to put even more money back into the pockets of hardworking Americans. Peter.
Caroline, if I can ask you very quickly about the information we've seen, just to set the predicate to all this. Has the president been briefed and physically seen he's seen all the details of the chat as printed by the Atlantic?
I just spoke to the president about it, yes.
Then let me ask you, if I can, very quickly. In the chat, Pete Hegseth, the defense secretary, details F-18s, Tomahawks, so some of the weapons that were used. He details the timing involved for this, all of which occurred 31 minutes before, as he says, F-18s would launch. The DoD manual details classified information as significant military plans, saying that is secret, that's classified. So what about, there are no methods, there are no sources, but that's not what determines what's classified. So what is it about what Pete Hegseth wrote that makes you say this is not classified?
Well, it's not just me saying that, Peter. It's the Secretary of Defense himself who is saying this as well. And he put out a very strong statement earlier today listing all of the things that were not included in that message that he sent to the group. And again, this message, there was no classified information transmitted. There were no war plans discussed. Why did the Atlantic downgrade their allegation about war plans to attack plans? They're now playing word games because they know this was sensationalist spin from a reporter who is well known for doing this. We have said all along no war plans were discussed, no classified material was sent. You have the Secretary of Defense saying that. You have the director of the CIA, the director of National Intelligence, the FBI director, all testifying to that under oath, and they should be trusted with that.
To be clear, Americans can make the decision for themselves, but whether you said it's not war plans. Would you characterize these as military plans, military operation plans?
I would characterize this messaging thread as a policy discussion, a sensitive policy discussion, surely, amongst high-level cabinet officials and senior staff. And I'm so glad, Peter, that you said the American public can decide for themselves, because I think the American public should decide for themselves based on the outcome of this operation. And what happened in this operation? Terrorists that were allowed to run wild by the Biden administration were killed because of the direction and the determination of this president and his team. And this message also shows, this messaging thread also proved that President Trump has an incredibly dynamic team who is working incredibly hard, flying all over the world to secure world peace and to fix up the foreign policy crises that the previous administration left for this team to inherit.
So to be clear, we all in this room and around the country would agree that we're glad no American service members were harmed, and we're glad that the mission was a success. We'll stipulate that. But the president said that Pete Hegseth said none of this was classified. So given the president has seen it now, and given the president understands that significant military plans are deemed classified as secret, how does the president view none of this, which details times and weapons and more, as being not classified?
I've already been asked and answered this question. The president's thoughts on this remain the same today as they were yesterday,
On what basis,
as well as the Secretary of Defense. This question has been asked and answered. There was no classified material discussed. Jackie.
On what basis I was asking?
Go ahead, Jackie.
Thank you, Caroline. So why aren't launch times on a mission strike classified?
Again, I would defer you to the Secretary of Defense's statement he put out this morning. There were various reasons he listed, things that were not included in that messaging thread that were not classified. And again, going back to the American public, do you trust the Secretary of Defense, who was nominated for this role, voted by the United States Senate into this role, who has served in combat, honorably served our nation in uniform? Or do you trust Jeffrey Goldberg, who is a registered Democrat and an anti-Trump sensationalist reporter? This president and this national security team are putting our national security and the American people first. We are restoring American strength around the world, and the results of this operation speak for themselves.
Putting aside Jeffrey Goldberg, though, just for American service members who are going to have to carry out these missions in the future, what I guess the message that's coming from the response to all this that we're hearing is that, nothing sensitive happened. And I guess the logical conclusion of that is that if these messages had gone out publicly prior to the launch, that wouldn't have been a risk to service members. I don't know that they're comfortable with that. So can you explain, had these messages been published, would the plans have moved forward? Would the launch have still taken off?
What I can tell you is that the president, as the commander-in-chief of our United States Armed Forces, and Secretary Pete Hegseth, who is an incredible man and a warfighter himself, take the lives of our American service members with the utmost responsibility, and they would never do anything intentionally to put their lives at risk. And again, they are working hard on that every single day, and we are protecting our service members while also restoring peace throughout this globe. It's something the previous administration has not done. And I would just add one more point. We are not going to be lectured about national security and American troops by Democrats and the mainstream media who turned the other cheek when the Biden administration, because of their incompetence, left 13 service members dead in Afghanistan, and not a single person in the previous administration was held accountable for that botched withdrawal. Joe Biden said, in fact, it was a great operation. That is despicable. It's unacceptable to this president and this Secretary of Defense. The National Security Advisor has taken responsibility for this inadvertent number being added to the messaging thread. But above all, we take the lives of our troops, safety, security, prosperity around the globe with the utmost seriousness.
Goldberg's intentions, do you believe that he released that to embarrass the administration ahead of the worldwide threats?
Jennifer, go ahead.
Given what you've said about the president's trust in his national security team, can you say definitively that no one will lose their jobs? No one will lose their job at all because of this signal situation?
What I can say definitively is what I just spoke to the president about, and he continues to have confidence in his national security team.
One more, can I ask one more, Karen? On the targets in Yemen on March 15th, can you say were 100% of the targets that were planned for March 15th, were they all destroyed? Because that would be an indication if some of them were moved or they were not all hit, that maybe perhaps some of the enemies were able to get some of the information in that signals.
What I can say about the operation is what the Department of Defense has put out there. I would refer to them for any further operational details. But there have been more than 100 strikes conducted against Houthi targets, and they have hit key Houthi leaders, air defense systems, command and control nodes, headquarters, weapons manufacturing and storage facilities. And these operations will continue until the freedom of navigation in our seas is restored and U.S. shipping can safely transmit without the fear of attack. And again, we believe that this has been a very successful operation thus far, and it will continue until this administration feels it no longer has to, and these terrorists have been taken out, which again is something the previous administration should have done, but they didn't, and now we've inherited this crisis. Stephen.
Thank you, Karoline. I'd like to clarify something about the investigation and also ask about some conservative commentary. On the investigation, Mike Waltz said last night that he had spoken to Elon Musk about figuring out how Jeffrey Goldberg's number got in his phone. You mentioned the NSC and the White House counsel's office investigating. Can you just clarify who is investigating, who's leading that, and also Dave Portnoy, who endorsed President Trump, said today that he thinks that Mike Waltz should leave. Could you respond to that?
Sure. Great respect for Dave Portnoy, but I just answered that previous question from Jennifer. As for your original question about who's looking into the messaging thread, the National Security Council, the White House counsel's office, and also, yes, Elon Musk's team. Elon Musk has offered to put his technical experts on this to figure out how this number was inadvertently added to the chat. Again, to take responsibility and ensure this can never happen again.
I have two questions. One on a follow-up on something you just said. But since we have these messages released, and you said that the president has now personally reviewed them, at the chat, at one point, Pete Hegseth wrote 14-15 strike drones on target, and in all caps, he said, "This is when the first bombs will definitely drop." Does the president feel that he was misled by his national security advisors, whoever it was that told him there was no classified information in there, now that he's seen these messages?
I've now been asked and answered this question 3 times by the both of you, and I've given you my answer. The president feels the same today as he did yesterday.
Okay.
Philip.
And on my follow-up on what you had just said.
Go ahead, Philip.
Caitlin,
I'm not taking your follow-up.
I have a follow-up on something you just said, though, Caroline. That's
Caitlin,
regarding
I'm not
Jeffrey
taking
Goldsberg.
your follow-up. Philip, go ahead. I have called on you.
The vice president seemed to express some frustration that Europe wasn't doing more to police waterways in their backyard, noting in that signal thread that 40% of European trade goes through the Suez Canal. Does the president share that opinion and frustration? And then going forward, should the Europeans be responsible for policing that waterway?
Well, the president was asked this question yesterday by the pool in the cabinet room, and he answered this question. He said yes, he believes that Europe has been, as the vice president put it, freeloading on the backs of American taxpayers and off the backs of the United States of America, and he wants to ensure that Europe pays their fair share. He's always been very honest and upfront about that, and I think the vice president shares those concerns with him as well.
And then one more.
Sure.
Enlisted soldiers, sailors, and Marines would face consequences if they shared this type of information inadvertently with a reporter. Can you tell us more why the president is so willing to give Mike Waltz a mulligan here?
Again, I have now been asked and answered the same question using different language multiple times. If anybody has another question, there's a lot of different things going on in the world. We have tariffs possibly being implemented later today. The president is going to talk about that at 4 o'clock this afternoon. Sure, go ahead.
Okay, thank you for taking my question. I wanted to first and foremost thank the administration for the election integrity executive order, because so many journalists for 4 years were banned from talking about this very subject. So thank you to the administration for that. My question is, yesterday President Trump, when signing the order, said that there is more to come when it comes to election integrity. Would that include same-day voting and hand-counted paper ballots? And why are Democrats so against election integrity measures like obviously proof of citizenship when it comes to voting in a United States election?
Well, it's a very good question. You'll have to ask the Democrats why they're against so many common sense things, not just mandating voter ID. Why are they against men and women's sports? Why are they against deporting foreign terrorists from American soil who have been designated a foreign terrorist organization? I'm referring to Tren de Aragua. As for the election integrity executive order that the president signed yesterday, this is in an effort to restore trust in American elections. There were more than 10 steps taken, 10 executive actions taken throughout this one order. It directs the department, or the attorney general rather, in Homeland Security to prevent non-citizens from any involvement in administering elections. There's also another host of actions. We can provide the fact sheet for you, but it's a very strong election integrity executive order, and the president would also like to see Congress do something about this very important issue.
And about Judge Goldsberg.
Sure, go ahead.
Caroline, the Republicans and Democrats alike have been expressing some concern about the frequency with which senior Trump officials have been using this Signal app. Has there been discussion, or will there be a review about how often they use Signal, and if you could explain to us how they might be considering other applications to get away from something like this happening again?
Sure. Well, again, first of all, Signal has been an approved app for government use. It's an encrypted app, and as I said, it's the most safe and efficient way of communicating, especially when people can't be in a skiff or inside a room physically together. I think, as the president said yesterday, he wishes that everybody could be in the room, and it's our goal to ensure that everybody can be. But again, no classified information was discussed in this chat, and any time classified information is discussed amongst high-level officials across this administration, secure lines of communication are used, including, by the way, our special envoy, Steve Witkoff, who I understand the Wall Street Journal erroneously reported that he was on this Signal chat on a personal device while in Moscow. That is absolutely false. Steve Witkoff did not have his personal device, nor did he have his government device with him. He was given a classified, protected server by the United States government, and he was very careful about his communications when he was in Russia. So rest assured, to the American public, this administration is taking every precaution when it comes to protecting our national security. And that's why the American people reelected this president, because they know that our national security is in good hands with the president of the United States. Speaking of the vice president, I understand he's going to be speaking any moment now. I would hate to counter-program the vice president of the United States. You'll also hear from the president at 3 o'clock. He will be honoring Women's History at the Women's History Month celebration. We have a lot of great women across our cabinet who will be in attendance, so we'll see you all there.
The exploding security scandal engulfing the Trump administration. It's only 2 days old, if you can believe that. Now, Trump officials are desperately, and I mean desperately, trying to pretend that sharing attack plans on a non-secure app where a journalist happens to be present, that's a key part of this. It's that they shared it on the app and the journalist happened to be present. That's how we know about it. But they're all pretending to be considered classified at the time because they're so specific and they're detailed and they could put people's lives at risk. We're going to show you the text with the actual military actions they're describing because I think it's important to see them. So Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth wrote, quote, "Team update, time now, 11:44 Eastern. Weather is favorable. Just confirmed with CENTCOM. We are go for mission launch. 12:15 Eastern, F-18s launch, first strike package." He then goes on to describe more F-18 and drone strikes. Hegseth then continues to update the chat. 14:10, military time, of course. More F-18s launch, second strike package. 14:15, strike drones on target. This is when the first bombs will definitely drop. 15:36, F-18 second strike starts. Also, first sea-based Tomahawks launched. You can see the missiles launched right there on the screen. And adding, we are currently clean on OPSEC, meaning operational security. Boy, that one doesn't age so well, does it? Now, there you have it. Those are very detailed. That is exactly what was published from The Atlantic. Those are specifics of what was on this group chat. Now, the transcript of the Signal chat released just this morning completely, obviously, undercuts those repeated denials from Donald Trump, Pete Hegseth, and others. In releasing the information, which The Atlantic had originally withheld because of the operational details, they cited a clear public interest in disclosing the information. Trump officials were also back on the Hill today, where they got grilled by Democrats, many calling for Hegseth to resign.
It is outrageous and it is a leadership failure.
I would argue that Secretary Hegseth, if he had the dignity that he needs to have, should be walking his resignation in, because I believe that his probably is heading toward being relieved of his duty based on what I think are significant and illegal leaks.
Nobody is willing to come to us and say this was wrong. This was a breach of security and we won't do it again.
He needs to resign immediately and a full investigation needs to be undertaken.
Now, Congressman Jason Crow's answer there, I mean, that sticks with me because nobody's acknowledged wrongdoing here. There are lots of things wrong, but that's a big one of them. Earlier this morning, The Atlantic's Jeffrey Goldberg, who, of course, was the journalist who was added to the text chain and wrote the piece on Monday, also highlighted the dangers of sharing military plans in an unsecured chat.
Look, imagine this text went to someone else. I mean, if that's not secret, classified information about, or the most sensitive kind of government information in the world, I don't know what is. This is operational details about a forthcoming attack on an enemy that has anti-aircraft capabilities.
Now, Goldberg also wrote today, quote, "If this had been received by someone hostile to American interests or someone merely indiscreet, the consequences for American pilots could have been catastrophic." The Pentagon guidelines, by the way, on what constitutes classified information are actually pretty clear and include disclosure of significant military plans or intelligence operations.
This text message is clearly classified information. Secretary Hegseth has disclosed military plans as well as classified information.
Targets, times, those kinds of things are absolutely classified, and we all know it.
There is no way, having sat on this committee for 9 years, that somebody would come in with that information and give us something that says unclassified. You can walk out of this room with this information and give it to whomever you want. Y'all know that's a lie. It's a lie to the country.
Joining me now is Democratic Congressman Jimmy Gomez, member of the Intel Committee, who was part of today's hearing, and Samantha Vinograd, former Assistant Secretary for Counterterrorism, Threat Prevention, and Law Enforcement Policy at the Department of Homeland Security. Both certainly know how classified information should work and how it travels. Congressman, let me start with you. We showed a number of clips from that hearing today. It felt to me from reading the coverage there weren't a lot of questions answered. There's a lot of obfuscation, if you could say. Did you learn anything from the hearing? And what did you think of their answers?
I don't think they didn't answer anything. And second, it just doesn't pass the smell test. I mean, this is something that's so rational. One, they were first denying that they had this conversation until the report came out. Two, they're denying that there was any kind of targeting information, what weapons were used. And then even just yesterday, Tulsi goes on, uses the I don't recall defense. You've been on the job 43 days. This happened 10 days ago. You're using Signal not to plan where you guys are going to go for lunch, but to launch an military operation using lethal force. This doesn't make sense on any level, and they're straight up lying to the American public about it.
I mean, the I don't recall really doesn't pass the smell test. So just take your words. Sam, one of the explanations they've given, or the kind of strategies they've had here, should I say, is to say no one was hurt. The operation was successful. This just shows us policy discussion and debate and coordination. You've been in these rooms. You've sat in these meetings. You know how this information is supposed to travel. Why is information traveling over a channel like this, putting people at risk?
Classified or sensitive information is meant to be discussed and transmitted on classified channels, not encrypted ones, because information is classified, Jen, based on the perceived harm its unauthorized disclosure could do to U.S. national security. Look at where we are today. The entire world now knows about internal communications among senior national security officials in the United States.
Including the vice president.
Including the vice president, national security advisor. It's not like we have that kind of insight into how Kremlin officials are discussing battle plans or how the People's Republic of China is having policy deliberations. Mm-hmm. And by having these kind of conversations in insecure ways, you open up these communications to exploitation by bad actors, foreign governments, criminal networks who can use it to gain an advantage on the battlefield, to gain insights into how the U.S. government is working, and more. Classified information and sensitive information should stay in secure places.
One of the things I've been wondering about is how many other Signal chats were there possibly? I mean, this one was the Houthi PC small group Signal chat. I can't imagine it was the first one. I'm sure you wonder about that.
No, it's definitely a question that has run through my head, and it just shows on if they were this sloppy on this issue, they're probably sloppy on other issues. And here's the thing. Signal, if you can read the Signal chat, then the Chinese and the Russians, who are most likely on your phones, can read it. This is something that when you get on the committee, they drill it into you. Everything that's on your phone is compromised. Mm-hmm. So when they have this kind of discussion, they're really putting the lives of our men and women in service in danger.
No question about it, which is why I think this brushing through of nobody was hurt this time, don't worry about it, is offensive to people serving our country in the military. One of the debates here, I don't think it's a debate, is this question of whether this information was classified. And there's I don't want to call it semantics, but the issue here is that this information was operational and put people at risk, and it put an operation at risk. How did you read it, and you've seen a lot of classified information, digested it? What do you think?
Sure. Never have I ever seen an operational plan that was not classified. Yeah. So this doesn't have to be a guessing game, though. What Secretary Hegseth was messaging about, the timing of the strikes, the weapons being used, that was all derived from an operational plan, probably drafted by the Joint Chiefs of Staff, that got an original classification. In this situation, what would be prudent would be for there to be an investigation into what the original classification of that content was, that Secretary Hegseth then ostensibly copied into the Signal chat. What we haven't seen is the FBI, for example, announcing such an investigation, or the Pentagon proactively saying we're going to look into this. We should take the guessing out of this and let professionals do their jobs to determine if there was, in fact, an unauthorized disclosure of classified information, so we can avoid any unintended consequences.
One of the questions I often get when people stop me in the grocery store, I'm sure you all get the same things, is like, what can Congress do? What can people do? I mean, you're in the minority in the House. The Democrats are in the minority in the Senate. There's certainly public opinion, and public opinion is not excited. They are very displeased by this, to put it diplomatically. What can Congress do to compel an investigation? What can you do in the minority, I should say, to compel an investigation, to push for more information if there isn't cooperation from Mike Johnson and the leadership in the House?
Yeah, we have to keep pushing and then discussing this in public. Today, one of the guys from Barstool Sports said, "Hey, this doesn't jive. This doesn't work."
It's a sign it's broken through, perhaps. Yes.
It's a sign that's broken through to the people that they care about. And we got to keep raising that as an issue, because this is not about scoring political points. This is about the safety of our armed services and how sloppy this administration has become. Remember, this is not the first lap of judgment that this administration has had when it comes to the CIA, DOGE, and OPM. This is a reoccurring thing that we're seeing. So I think that we got to keep talking about it, and then hopefully the tide turns and the senators stand up.
Representative, another story that relates to the media today. Have you seen the new information revealed by The Atlantic magazine about the signal texts?
We're talking about NPR and PBS, not The Atlantic.
But do you believe that this was classified information that was shared on that group?
No, the administration has said it is not classified information. I think this is a continuance of someone like you to try to push an issue that isn't even relevant. And I think that we're carrying on. Thank you.
Detail of timings and weapons, is that not classified information?
Yes. Yeah. Anybody else?
Should the Defence Secretary and the Vice...
Wait, what country are you
from? From the UK.
Okay, we don't give a crap about your opinion and your reporting. Why don't you go back to your country where you have a major migrant problem?
Okay, do you care?
No. You should care about your own borders.
Do you care about American lives being put at risk?
Let me tell you something. Do you care about people from your country? What about all the women that are raped by migrants?
Do you care about
No, do you care? Okay,
do you care about American lives being put at risk? About service members fighting for your country?
I don't care
and
about
your Vice President and your Defense Secretary?
Yeah, this is an American journalist. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm an American, and I'd like to hear your answer to what she's asking.
I'm not answering her question
because
I don't care about her network. If you would like to ask, I can answer.
Do you have any concerns whatsoever about the complete...
So the new answer, the new response these days is go back to your country. It's like superstars, entertainers, sports figures. Soon as you start criticizing them or put them to challenge about some truths that they can't respond to or been ordered to play dumb to, they become so frustrated. Politicians say, go back to your country. And superstars and entertainers, they say, I got more money than you. Crazy, man.
Disregard of operational security from the top level of this administration.
You want to know about complete disregard about operational security? You should talk about the Biden administration and how they ripped our borders open to terrorist, cartel, child sex trafficking, human trafficking, and drug trafficking across our borders for 4 years. The Trump administration is doing a great job, and I stand by their statements.
So you have
I stand by their statements. My comment to you is I'm thankful to President Trump that he is leading us out of wars, that he's ending the war in Ukraine, where American lives could have been killed if Joe Biden was still president today, whether he liked it or not.
Okay.
We're talking about NPR and PBS today.
The voice is definitely Roseanne. I give you that.
Talking about fake news that was funded with federal funding from American taxpayers. That's what this is about today, not journalists from the UK.
A journalist is being vilified for exposing failings in the way that your government conducts itself. Is that not that journalist doing a good job?
Talking about NPR and PBS, not The Atlantic.
The media today. Have you seen the new information revealed by The Atlantic magazine about the signal texts?
We're talking about NPR and PBS, not The Atlantic.
But do you believe that this was classified information that was shared on that group?
No, the administration has said it is not classified information. I think this is a continuance of someone like you to try to push an issue that isn't even relevant. And I think that we're carrying on. Thank you.
Detail of timings and weapons, is that not classified information?
Yes. Anybody else?
Should the Defence Secretary and the Vice...
Wait, what country are you
from? From the UK.
Okay, we don't give a crap about your opinion and your reporting. Why don't you go back to your country where you have a major migrant problem?
Okay, do you care?
No. You should care about your own borders.
Do you care about American lives being put at risk?
Let me tell you something. Do you care about people from your country?
Fell spawn, Trump. Can you say something or add some additional words to the Trump? I don't think you're a bot, but you're acting like one. Add some additional text. Switch the shit up. You keep spamming the Trump. I know if you love Trump, you got to have different words you can add to your post. I don't want to block you or hide you from the channel. Say some different stuff.
What about all the women that are raped by migrants?
Do you care about
No, do you care? Okay, you're
do you care about American lives being put at...
Wonderful, fell spawn. That's what I'm talking about. What you gonna do? All that. Yeah, say stuff.
Risk about service members fighting for your country.
I don't care
and
about
your Vice President and your Defense Secretary.
Yeah, this is an American journalist. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm an American, and I'd like to hear your answer to what she's asking.
I'm not answering her question
right,
because I don't care about her network. If you would like to ask, I can answer.
Do you have any concerns whatsoever about the complete disregard of operational security from the top level of this administration?
You want to know about complete disregard about operational security? You should talk about the Biden administration and how they ripped our borders open to terrorist, cartel, child sex trafficking, human trafficking, and drug trafficking across our borders for 4 years. The Trump administration is doing a great job, and I stand by their statements. I stand by their statements. My comment to you is I'm thankful to President Trump that he is leading us out of wars, that he's ending the war in Ukraine, where American lives could have been killed if Joe Biden was still president today, whether he liked it or not. We're talking about NPR and PBS today. We're talking about fake news that was funded with federal funding from American taxpayers. That's what this is about today, not journalists from the UK.
A journalist is being vilified for exposing failings in the way that your government conducts itself. Is that not that journalist doing a good
next
job?
time.
Does Defence Secretary Hegseth need to resign over this, Representative?
Absolutely not. He's doing a great job.
He's doing a great job, but he was putting American service members' lives at risk.
Your country's going to put
this is deflect
lives fighting a war in Ukraine that's not even a member of NATO.
Is this an exercise in deflection?
This should be an
Fell
exercise
spawn
in
had to
your own
leave.
country.
He had to catch his troll bus.
Martha, I mean, quite a spiky interaction there with Marjorie Taylor.
But I will say this, only because I have the mic. I didn't vote for Trump, but I'm not against Trump. I am definitely not against Trump. This last incident with the reporter being invited onto the Signal group chat, I just wish that the Trump administration would have decided to own it. All they had to do was say, we fucked up. We fucked up. Yeah, we did it. The minute that you admit to it, we all learn this at home. We learn this at school. This is some kiddie common sense, basic IQ. It doesn't take Ivy League school. It doesn't take Harvard Business School. It doesn't take tremendous lawyers. None of that shit. The moment you admit to fucking up, you flip the mirror on the person that keep bringing it up. That's what you do. But as long as you say it was the reporter's fault, he snuck in, now they're going to blame it on the app. Now they're going to have Elon Musk technical people look at the app signal. Here's what they don't know. This is when you're talking to the uninformed, and they talk before they get informed. They don't realize that Elon Musk is the one that recommended everybody switch the signal back when Facebook or Meta, that was known as Facebook at the time, they bought WhatsApp. And when they bought WhatsApp, they came out with a new policy saying that they would expose and sell the metadata about accounts to people, to companies as business. That's when Musk and some of these other companies decided to switch to Signal, because it's the same people. The people that helped build WhatsApp, they helped build Signal. It's the same engineers. They just split off after the selling. That's when they said, no, we'll go to Signal. And then that's when Musk was like, we going to signal. But this was a few years ago, right? He didn't even know Trump then. But that's what I'm saying. The irony of it is you're going to have Elon Musk potentially lie and assassinate the technology when there was nothing wrong with the technology. It was just a human error. Just say you fucked up and let's keep it going. But they keep digging the hole and now they in it. That's what it is. That's all it is, really. I mean, really. Damn.
President Trump is truly turning America and in controlled facilities, weapons manufacturing facilities, and advanced military operations against the terrorist Houthis to defend U.S. shipping.
Dude was not paying attention to what he was doing. And he used his personal phone to do it. That's all. It's nothing to it. So even the people who love Trump, you're willing to say Trump's administration never screws up. The Secretary of State will never make a mistake. The defense will never make a mistake. Pam Bodie, whatever, Bondi, as a attorney general, she would never make a mistake. Are you serious? You mean you love Trump so much their shit smells like Chanel No. 5? Why can't every now and then their shit have an odor to it? That's all. It's all of us. It's not just Trump and them that can fuck up. It's anybody. It's anybody. Damn. Use your fucking brain.
Assets in the Red Sea, restore freedom of navigation for international shipping, and defend the United States from enemy threats. United States forces.
You got this woman here being flustered because she got to defend somebody making the mistake. The guy didn't do anything nefarious. He's not working with the ops. He's not on the enemy side. He was just made a mistake. He invited, listen, you crackheads and dum-dums that can't get it through your lead brain. He invited the reporter. The reporter didn't just jump on there. I know that's what you want to believe. Here's what might help you out. Download Signal and create a group. Do some research online about Signal. Ask Elon Musk, who recommended Signal years ago. It didn't have nothing to do with the government. Do your own fucking research, you fucking numbwicks, demagoguery professors. He invited him. He accepted the invite. And now he wants to blame him and say he snuck on there. And now they want Elon Musk to assassinate and say something technically is wrong with Signal. No, dumb, stupid asses. Who made the mistake? Waltz. Okay, Waltz. Tell these people you just made a mistake. It won't happen no more. I'm fucking human, and let's keep it moving. The minute you do that, here's what happens. The media and everybody else looks like a fool to keep bringing up a mistake that you said that you made. But because you want to keep defending it, they got all the fuel and flames you want. The Democrats and the people who hated Trump, they didn't even have a voice. They couldn't even stand up straight. They couldn't even lock their fucking knees until this happened. Not because it happened. You're missing it. Because you didn't take ownership when it did and said, we fucked up, we screwed up, that ain't gonna happen no more. What's the next question? But now you can't say that because you fucking dummies look stupid defending the obvious. Talking about, it ain't no thing that he got them documents. Well, it ain't no thing. Then why the CIA told him don't publish it then? I mean, come on, man. God damn, you fucked up, you fucked up.
Successfully struck dozens of targets across Houthi-controlled territory. And as a result of these actions, several Houthi leaders were killed, including the Houthi drone chief,
And I like this woman. I think she's cute. I love it when she smiles. But now she's got to sit there looking like all the fucking blood is drained from her goddamn face and to defend the nonsensical because they got a dumbass that won't admit that he just screwed up.
Deputy and several of their drone experts and other key leaders. We also destroyed command and controlled facilities, weapons manufacturing facilities, and advanced weapons storage locations. And it's important to remember why this powerful action took place in the first place. Because of Joe Biden's incompetence and pathetic weakness on the world stage.
That's the part I don't understand. The part I don't understand is the app worked exactly the way it's supposed to. Download the app, you fucking ignorant, dumbass, fucking deitizing people. Download the app. The app not broke. You create a group and you invite people. How do you invite people? Through the phone number. How else can you invite people? If you're using a username, you can have a QR code at this point. And you don't even need the phone number. Like, why you won't take 5 minutes to find out how the app works so you won't sound like some fucking Neanderthal talking about it's encrypted and the reporter snuck on there. Now the reporter's a hacker. Like, where's your fucking brain? They invited him. He accepted it. The app works like that. Here go the part though you don't want to talk about though. You ready? He invited him with his phone number. Where was his phone number at? Sitting on his own personal fucking device. Why was he using his personal device to invite people to such a sensitive group? Because he was too fucking lazy to use the secure device. But y'all don't want to look into that. Don't bring that up. Don't show me that. The app is broke. Which one is it? Which one is it? Dum-dums and dumblets. Which one is it? Did the reporter hack himself onto the group, or is the fucking Signal app broke? Or is it that the Signal app is broke and the reporter snuck on there, hacking on there? Is that what it is? You fucking idiots. You so fucking stupid.
For years, the Houthi terrorists grew emboldened. Immediately after taking office in 2021, Joe Biden removed the Iran-backed Houthis from the foreign terrorist organization and specifically designated global terrorist list. Did anybody in this room ask the Biden administration at the time why they made such a stupid mistake? This reckless action undid the designation put in place by President Trump during his first term, and what followed was predictable and devastating. The Houthis targeted U.S. military ships and aircraft, hit commercial ships, including U.S.-flagged vessels, threatened our personnel overseas, and attacked our allies in the region. This resulted in more than a year of U.S.-flagged commercial ships being prevented from safely sailing through the Suez Canal, the Red Sea, and the Gulf of Aden. This had a massive negative impact on global trade of the economic security of the United States. Joe Biden was the commander-in-chief, and he sat on his hands while the United States of America was bullied and embarrassed by terrorists. President Trump and his team are putting a stop to these threats and restoring American strength around the world. The Trump peace through strength approach means no terrorist force will stop American commercial and naval vessels from freely sailing the waterways of the world. But unfortunately, this is not what the Democrats and the media want to talk about. They are focused on a coordinated campaign to try and sow chaos in this White House. And this has been the most successful first 2 months of any administration ever, which is exactly why they are doing this. We are not going to bend in the face of this insincere outrage. And here's just one example of how bad faith the Democrats' criticisms are. Democrat Senator Mark Warner is hysterical over the use of Signal, which is an approved decrypted app, in the killing of Houthi terrorists. But Senator Warner himself used Signal to work with a lobbyist for a Russian oligarch to connect with the disgraced Steele dossier author who started the Russia hoax, which Jeffrey Goldberg later reported on. How ironic. We're not going to lose focus of the bottom line, which is that Joe Biden's weakness enabled and emboldened Houthi terrorists, and President Trump's strength and resolve eliminated those terrorists. Here in our new media seat today, we have Lindsay Keith. She is the managing editor for Merit TV and serves as their White House correspondent. Merit TV launched 1 year ago and creates and distributes content across diverse platforms. We're glad to have you with us, Lindsay. Please kick us off.
Karoline, I appreciate it and this opportunity for Merit TV. 2 questions, if I may. One on Signal, one on the economy. Sure. On Signal,
How comfortable is the president with what was shared so far now that the chain has been released?
The president's view on all of this remains the same today as it did yesterday. And I think it speaks volumes about the leadership of this president that he went directly to all of you, members of the press corps. He was asked, do you want someone else to go out and do a briefing? And he said, no, I will tackle this story. I will discuss it. The people need to hear from me about the situation. And so his thoughts on this remained the same today. He has placed great trust in his national security team. And as for the usage of Signal, as the president said yesterday, as the CIA director has testified under oath, this is an approved app. It's an encrypted app. The Department of Defense.
Nothing's wrong with the app Signal. It is approved. It's whatever they said it is. Signal's app is fine. It ain't Signal. The guy made a mistake and won't admit it. And instead of him going out front, taking that ass whipping or going in the backyard, taking this fucking licking, he'd rather put everybody on Front Street and spend all the time and money and wastefulness defending a simple mistake. We all know people like that. All of us know people like that. This has nothing to do with just in the White House and these Ivy League lawyers and these pristine looking people with these wonderful billionaires all around them. No, it's a flaw in certain people's character. It's in there. His persona, his character wouldn't allow him to say, Trump, President, sir, I screwed up. The app did exactly what I told it to do. I wasn't paying attention. In the haste of movement, I sent it out, invited this guy, and I'm not even thinking about it. And he said, you know, well, how did you invite him? You had his phone number? Well, here's the reality of it. If you use usernames, you don't need the phone number, and you can still have people join because that's another way that they did it. At one time, you could only do it by phone number, and then Signal added this other way to do it, where you don't know the phone number, and it's just the user, but it's still from the device. It's still from the device. And it's still end-to-end encryption. And the advantage of it being end-to-end encryption for you dummies that don't understand that means there's no server sitting somewhere holding all of the information like Facebook. Like Meta and them, where they got the server and it's sitting there. And then when the police want to investigate your ass or indict you or lie on you, law enforcement sends it there. And all them times you hit delete, it's sitting there as a soft delete. And depending on their policy of holding it, they bring it right back up and play that shit out in court for you. And you've screwed. But he wouldn't admit that he just sent the link or he sent the invite, or he sent, wow, somebody that loves Trump, and I like Trump. Somebody explain to me, if you can walk away from the deity of it, from making people God and thinking their shit smell like perfumes, why won't this man just admit to a mistake he made? Somebody answer that, and I promise I'll shut the hell up. He just made a mistake.
The Department of State, the CIA, has it loaded onto government phones because it is the most secure and efficient way to communicate. As for, again, the original situation in this messaging thread, the National Security Council, the White House counsel's office continues to look in to how this mistake, which the National Security Advisor has owned, occurred, and the president has ensured they are doing that.
On the economy, consumer confidence hit a 4-year low this month. Can you help explain to the American people how tariffs will help them in the long run?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm grateful for the question. The American public will hear later this afternoon from the president directly on the topic of tariffs. And as you all know, April 2nd day, President Trump has proudly dubbed it Liberation Day for our country. What he means by that is it will be a day where the United States of America will no longer be ripped off by nations around this world. It will be a day where Americans finally see free and fair trade practices restored. We are no longer going to allow our allies, our competitors, and our adversaries
about figuring out how Jeffrey Goldberg's number got
Believe that this has been a very successful operation thus far, and it will continue until this administration feels it no longer has to, and these terrorists have been taken out, which again is something the previous administration should have done, but they didn't, and now we've inherited this crisis. Stephen.
Thank you, Karoline. I'd like to clarify something about the investigation and also ask about some conservative commentary. On the investigation, Mike Waltz said last night that he had spoken to Elon Musk about figuring out how Jeffrey Goldberg's number got in his phone.
Listen to that. Listen to that. Mike Waltz spoke with Elon Musk to figure out how Jeffrey Goldberg's number got into his phone. Isn't that crazy? You're going to investigate everything everywhere. You're going to put that blame on the app. You're going to have Elon Musk. You're going to have Jeffrey everything. Jeffrey Goldberg said, if you watched any of the interviews, whether you like Trump, hate Trump, love Jeffrey, want to get in bed with fucking Elon, it don't matter. He said, I talked about it initially because I didn't want to show it to nobody, but since they attacked me and want to make it seem like I got myself in that group, I said, fuck it, I'm going to show it to you.
You mentioned the NSC and the White House counsel's office investigating. Can you just clarify who is investigating, who's leading that? And also, Dave Portnoy, who endorsed President Trump, said today that he thinks that Mike Waltz should leave. Could you respond to that?
Sure. Great respect for Dave Portnoy, but I just answered that previous question.
The exploding security scandal engulfing the Trump administration. It's only 2 days old, if you can believe that. Now, Trump officials are desperately,
And welcome back here to Live Now from Fox. I'm Andrew Kraft. Live picture there at the White House. Well, President Trump standing by National Security Advisor Mike Waltz in relation to now day 3 of this story as the recriminations continue and the story continues. Editor-in-chief of The Atlantic magazine, Jeffrey Goldberg, publishing a follow-up piece today with more of the details that we can all see of this signal chat message that President Trump's national security team used in order to cooperate, conduct, and coordinate strikes against Houthi targets in Yemen. Fox News' Jennifer Griffin with more on this story. Let's listen.
Awesome grace of God that we are not mourning dead pilots right now.
More fallout from the national security text chain set up on Signal to discuss details of future operations to target the Houthis in Yemen. Defense Secretary Hegseth, who was visiting troops in Hawaii, spoke before departing for Guam.
Nobody's texting war plans. There's no units, no locations, no routes, no flight paths, no sources, no methods, no classified information.
The texts were sent by the defense secretary 2 hours before the airstrikes began. At 11:44 a.m. Eastern Time, Hegseth posted, "Weather is favorable, just confirmed with CENTCOM. We are a go for mission launch." Then he went on to outline the operation's future timeline. 12:15 Eastern, F-18s launch, first strike package. 14:15, strike drones on target. This is when the first bombs will definitely drop. 15:36, F-18 second strike starts. Also, first sea-based Tomahawks launched. Congressman Krishnamurti quoted from the DoD manual on classified information.
Information shall be classified if its unauthorized disclosure could reasonably be expected to cause describable damage to national security. This includes military plans, weapon systems, or operations.
That's also an accurate quote.
What was shared in the Signal group chat goes beyond war plans because they included the timing of the operations. The Republican head of the Senate Armed Services Committee, Roger Wicker, has called for an investigation and further hearings. Quote, "The information as published recently appears to me to be of such a sensitive nature that based on my knowledge, I would have wanted it classified." Current and former senior defense officials say it was. At the Pentagon, Jennifer Griffin, Fox News.
Jennifer, thanks so much. So the spokesperson there at the Pentagon, who is also traveling with Secretary Hegseth on this tour in Asia, his name, Sean Parnell, put out this statement this morning saying it's no surprise hoax peddlers at the Atlantic have already abandoned their quote-unquote war plans. Claim these additional signal chat messages confirm there were no classified materials or war plans shared. The secretary was merely updating the group on a plan that was underway and had already been briefed through official channels. The American people see through the Atlantic's pathetic attempts to distract from President Trump's national security agenda here. Also, Secretary Hegseth on the tarmac there in Hawaii before leaving for Guam. Let's listen.
What a beautiful day. It's always a beautiful day when we're on the road talking to the troops and actually in real time reestablishing deterrence. You see, that's what President Trump has charged the Defense Department with doing. Reviving the warrior ethos, rebuilding the military, which we're doing in real time, and reestablishing deterrence. And that's
so Flig comments and says ROI or ROI, I apologize about earlier. I'm with you, and I don't think that we'll ever see an honest government. Now, hang on for a second. Yeah. So let me just let y'all know, not that y'all want to know, and you shouldn't want to know, but I got the mic, so I'm acting like you want to know. Let me just share with you where I am about that. I don't look for an honest government, me personally, because I don't see how the government can be honest, okay? So I have no expectation of an honest government at all. I don't think we should have an honest government. I don't think we can have an honest government. So I have no expectation of an honest government. That's not my thing. But my thing is that situations and decisions are fluid. It's like water. They run, they can change direction. You got to be able to adjust. It's whatever it is, right? So, example, this situation here, it's easier, or a decision has to be made to say, I screwed up and it's not going to happen if the goal is to put it to bed. If we're trying to put it to bed, that's what I'm going to do. It's like now you sit there and the person that keeps bringing it up and talking about it, they look crazy because nobody's defending it. It's that concept. It's that principle involved there. The honest government part is almost like honest parents. I don't think you can have honest parents. You can have good parents. You can have loving parents. But the honesty part is a struggle for me because I can't see parents being honest and saying, I love this child more than this one. That might be a difficult thing to do in honesty. Sometimes parents pay for music lessons, vocal lessons, sports lessons, and different types of participation for their kids, and they know their kid don't even have that talent. They don't even show an acumen for it, the physicality involved or whatever, right? So honestly, you can't fucking sing, and the shit irritates me when you try to sing before 10 a.m. on a Saturday morning. But loving parents is something different, right? So the honest government, I don't even see how that can happen because why? There is a need to lie. There's definitely a need to manipulate. There's definitely a need to lie. There's definitely, it's just necessary, okay? I don't think anybody really wants to hear certain levels of honesty. So that's where I'm at with honest governments. But in the midst of all of the manipulation and deflection and distraction and all of that, you do need certain truths to stand up, right? I think it's just got to be in there in the alphabet soup of things, you know? So that's just where I am. I mean, like there's no such thing. There's no sitting president with his administration that's not going to lie. I mean, if you think that, just jump off this chat. Just never come back to this channel. There's no such thing because lying is required. Deception is a requirement. You can't even win the people through honesty. You won't get them. You just won't get them. Here's an example. 10 of us own a company. 10 of us run a company. And we have a front office. And part of that company, it might be a dating service. It might be a temp agency. It might be whatever. And let's say 10 of us are men. 10 of us are men. And the 10 men that I'm using that are in charge of this company, we like women. We just like women, right? We could be married. It doesn't matter if we're married or not. We like women. We're not homosexual, okay? We're not claiming to be a tree or some pronoun. We're heterosexuals and we like women, right? Okay, we're married to women. Somebody asked me, hey, who you want in the front desk? I'm going to be like, if you can find a talented female that's easy on the eyes, that's who I want in that front lobby. And they say, why, Todd? Because if I'm having a rough fucking weekend with my wife or my girlfriend, not that I want to sleep with the girl in the front lobby, but when I walk into my company on a Monday morning, and I'm thinking if anybody comes in here on a Monday morning, it's probably going to help their day or at least their Monday after a rough weekend to see some eye candy with talent, if possible. That's all I'm saying. She ain't got to be sitting there half dressed. None of that. She can be professional, whatever. But damn, I don't want to see a face of drudgery. That's honesty, right? That's me being honest, right? Who wants to hear that? Nobody wants to hear that. Oh, he's sexualizing women. Oh, he's a male chauvinist. Oh, he's this. Oh, he's that. And then they say, well, how tall she needs to be. Well, I don't want to have to look over the fucking counter to see her. So if we can get her at about 5'8", 5'9", maybe with some glasses, hair pulled back, showing her face, and she's talented, that's my honesty. That's my honesty. Bilingual maybe, that's my honesty. But y'all want lies, right? Y'all want lies? Okay, here go the lie. Hey, the talent is what's important. I don't care how she looks. Long as she's professional wearing deodorant, we good. That's the lie. That's the politically correct. It's just what it is. That's all. Why you think on YouTube, right? Take YouTube, for example. You put a cute face on there, and in an instance, no matter what she's talking about, she has 10,000 subscribers, 20,000 subscribers. She has 100,000 subscribers, 50,000 subscribers before somebody can figure out that she don't know what she's talking about and she not talking about shit. Why do you think that happens? If, in all honesty, why do you think that happens? Because of the aesthetics, because of the eye candy. The aesthetics and the eye candy alone is going to be worth about 10,000 subscribers. At least 5,000 off the rip. And then when somebody says, oh, you know what, I listen to so-and-so, she has a channel, then they say, oh, she's not even talking about nothing. Then they say, well, how did she get fucking 5,000 subs? Look at her. Initially, you want a sub to see what she has to talk about. And then after a few visits, you find out she's not talking about shit and she's just another cute face and you stop coming to her channel. That's the honesty of it. But we don't want that. And I understand it. So I'll shut up. All right. Let's see.
That's why we're heading out into the Indo-Pacific to talk to our allies and partners and meet with the troops. And anybody that knows me for years and knows President Trump knows how much we love the warriors. That's what it's about. The men and women who serve, who do the tough, difficult, gritty, dirty work that most Americans will never know about, but we have the privilege of seeing and understanding the courage and skill of what they do. I'm going to go see that for the next couple of days. We also have seen it on full display in what's been done to the Houthi terrorists and what they're trying to do to close freedom of navigation. So you see, under the Biden administration, we let our troops and our ships and both warships and commercial ships get shot at to no consequence. What does that look like? That looks like weakness. And what President Trump has said is peace through strength is back. We will reestablish deterrence. That's not acceptable. And our ongoing campaign against the Houthis has been devastatingly effective. Now, as I said to this group a couple of times on this trip now, as we move to the Indo-Pacific to do our job, which is what we're here to do, nobody's texting war plans. Well, I noticed this morning out came something that doesn't look like war plans. And as a matter of fact, they even changed the title to attack plans.
That relates to the media today. Have you seen the new information revealed by the Atlantic magazine about the signal texts?
We're talking about NPR and PBS, not the Atlantic.
But do you believe that this was classified information that was shared on that group?
No, the administration has said it is not classified information. I think this is a continuance of someone like you to try to push an issue that isn't even relevant. And I think that we're carrying on. Thank you.
Detail of timings and weapons, is that not classified information?
Yes. Yeah. Anybody else?
Should the Defence Secretary and the Vice...
Wait, what country are you
from? From the UK.
Okay, we don't give a crap about your opinion and your reporting. Why don't you go back to your country where you have a major migrant problem?
Okay, do you care?
No. You should care about your own borders.
Do you care about American lives being put at risk?
Let me tell you something. Do you care about people from your country? What about all the women that are raped by migrants?
Do you care about American...
No, do you care? Okay, you're
do you care about American lives being put at risk? About service members fighting for your country?
I don't care about
your Vice President and your Defense Secretary?
Yeah, this is an American journalist. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm an American, and I'd like to hear your answer to what she's asking.
I'm not answering her question
right,
because I don't care about her network. If you would like to ask, I can answer.
Do you have any concerns whatsoever about the complete disregard of operational security from the top level of this administration?
You want to know about complete disregard about operational security? You should talk about the Biden administration and how they ripped our borders open to terrorist, cartel, child sex trafficking, human trafficking, and drug trafficking across our borders for 4 years. The Trump administration is doing a great job, and I stand by their statements.
So you have
I stand by their statements. My comment to you is I'm thankful to President Trump that he is leading us out of wars, that he's ending the war in Ukraine, where American lives could have been killed if Joe Biden was still president today, whether he liked it or not. We're talking about NPR and PBS today. We're talking about fake news that was funded with federal funding from American taxpayers. That's what this is about today, not journalists from the UK.
A journalist is being vilified for exposing failings in the way that your government conducts itself. Is that not that journalist doing a good job? Does Defence Secretary Hegseth need to resign over this, Representative?
Absolutely not. He's doing a great job.
He's doing a great job, but he was putting American service members' lives at risk.
Your country's going to put
this is deflect
lives fighting a war in Ukraine that's not even a member of NATO.
Is this an exercise in deflection?
This should be an exercise in you worrying about your own country.
Martha, I mean, quite a spiky interaction there with Marjorie Taylor.
The exploding security scandal engulfing the Trump administration. It's only 2 days.
The Trump.
So, Hal, does this strike you as unclassified or classified?
Andrew, I have to tell you, this sort of stuff, if it was coming from within CENTCOM's U.S. Central Command channels, if it was from the task force itself, that would be something I'd expect to see coming through as secret communications, not unclassified communications. You know, talking about the launch of weapon systems and things. One thing I'm sure some of them are looking at this and, well, didn't say exactly where they're hitting. The group is called the Houthi PC chat group, group. So if you're in that group by any means, you know you're talking about the Houthi areas. If you're talking about the Houthi areas, that is a set piece of terrain. It's in Yemen. It's got a lot of high ground where they've set up air defense systems because they can see out a very long way from where that is. So if I'm there and I was, let's say hypothetically, that I'm Russia or China or Iran. If I'm Iran, I'm probably going to I could get a feed from Russia or China because I have arrangements with them. to get intelligence. And again, of course, Iran is the number one backer and supporter. They've been feeding targeting intelligence to the Houthis for forever. They got a ship sitting offshore that's essentially a big intelligence collector out there that feeds them intelligence all the time. So if I get this and I'm in Yemen, I'm in the Houthi areas, what could I do with that? Well, I could energize my air defense systems. They could be looking all around. There's only so many places they can hit. It's not like they're going to hit anywhere in the territory. Okay. So with that, potentially, yes, that could have resulted in an increased air defense posture, which could have brought down potentially U.S. aircraft, U.S. air crew, something along those lines.
So Hal,
yes.
Jim Himes, the Democrat from Connecticut, he's ranking member on House Intelligence. He said today, we should be so lucky we're not mourning dead pilots. Is that overwrought? Is that hyperbolic? Or would you have made the same assertion?
Well, I would say that there's a military value, and that's a little bit hyperbolic, a little bit overwrought. But that is the end state of this is if they get it, if they take defensive action, and if it results in them hitting an aircraft, yes, that would be the end state. But now, with that said, a couple things. Number one, that is not top secret information. I didn't see anything in that part what I would consider top secret. I did see it elsewhere under Mike Waltz, but I did not see that under what Hegseth sent out. That is operational security information. And I will mention he is the SecDef, the Secretary of Defense. So technically, he could, in his own mind, declassify it and put this out on an unclassed system because he is the ultimate classification authority within the Defense Department. So he does have that authority to do that. Now, it didn't say routes, okay, so you wouldn't get that type of intelligence. It didn't say targets, per se, so you wouldn't have that type of intelligence. Did talk about weapon systems, did talk about timing, did talk about when they launched, did talk about when they were hitting. So that was out there. So there is things that I would say from an intelligence standpoint has great value. And obviously, some of this could have only been gleaned via classified communications. I can't imagine any way he would have known about it.
So I want to focus on this part of this message. At 14:15, he says, this is when the first bombs will definitely drop. At 13:45, he says, target terrorist is at his known location, so should be on time. Now, Barbara Starr, the longtime former Pentagon correspondent for CNN, Hal, she says this: Walls revealed an extraordinary detail when he said there was intel showing the top Houthi missile guy walked into a building. She says you only know that if you have overhead surveillance, communications intercepts, or an operative on the ground. She says it means the U.S. had quote-unquote pattern of life intelligence. What does that mean? And is that what they had, do you think?
Well, that's exactly the point. And this goes to the other part where they said there was no sources and methods. Well, they didn't tell you exactly which source or what methodology, but if you have observation on a building, the girlfriend's building, where you see the target walking into the building, okay, that gets out there. All right, that means that something, it could be an overhead system, it could be an MQ-9 Reaper drone, it could be some other airborne system flying overhead. And here's the other part. It could be other things. In various strike missions, we have had, in some cases, CIA, human intelligence operatives on the ground that have literally eyes on target. They're actually looking at the target, telling you, yes, he just walked into his girlfriend's place or something, intelligence along those lines. That's another thing. It could be a special operations team, which is set up somewhere watching them. There are a lot of different ways that intelligence could have got there. Probably an overhead system, probably exactly what you said. But that does give away a source and a method because that is real-time data. There's only so many ways you can get real-time intelligence of that specificity, and that would tell them a lot just from that. So when they say there was no compromise of sources and methods, that's probably an overstatement. There wasn't a direct compromise of sources and methods, but there was enough there that you could glean some information regarding sources and methods of how they would have known that.
So, Hal, the line yesterday and today was no classified information was included in these messages from the White House, Pentagon, and elsewhere. But in the intelligence community, it has been reported former intelligence officials, current intelligence officials say what was included was classified here. So it seems to be the splitting of the hairs here. The language is being parsed. We'll get to that in just a moment. But I wanted to ask you this. What if lower-level employees at the State Department, at the Pentagon, in the intelligence community, what if they had discussed this in a similar forum, the same type of information, if they had access to it? What if it wasn't Pete Hegseth or Mike Waltz or Marco Rubio on this group chat, but low-level airmen, first class, very low-ranking people within the military? What if they were discussing the same information in a similar format? What would happen to them?
They'd be put in handcuffs, taken into a room, and have a very, very tough several hours trying to explain themselves. There really isn't any room on something like that. A friend of mine, retired Marine colonel, worked intelligence for decades. He said, he said today, he goes, if he or I had done something like that, we would have been behind bars before sunset. I mean, it's kind of open and shut. If something that is just, it's a gross error. Let's just put it that way. And certainly we have seen, we've seen bigger things. I think Airman Teixeira was a bigger thing because he actually released top secret information. I mean, that was very highly classified information with things that were of grave grave damage to national security. But you saw what happened to him. I mean, they put him behind bars, and theoretically, if they really wanted to push it, they could have put him behind bars for life. So it's pretty serious. And so, this was an inadvertent thing. I think the smart thing across the board of all the things I've heard was actually when Mike Waltz went out there and basically said, hey, this, in so many words, this was a big mistake. Okay. We shouldn't have done this. And I think he's also said today that he's definitely not going to be using signal chat groups to communicate this type of information in the future. I don't know if he meant that tongue in cheek, but he looked pretty serious when he said it. So this was a big mistake. Now, if I could mention just one thing, and they are going to take a look at this, and I'm not saying there's any politics in Washington where anybody in the White House will point fingers at the Biden administration, but this actually was put out. From what I gather, CISA, which is part of DHS, actually was talking about because of a penetration the Chinese had on iPhones and other cell phones, was saying, hey, use an encrypted, end-to-end encrypted chat system, and they specifically mentioned Signal as their preferred system. And there may have been preloading a Signal on phones, to include government phones. So there was actually direction by the government to use Signal. It's just what they communicated was too far. That was just too much. But there was actually direction to use Signal to do this type of communication. So in all fairness, it didn't come from nowhere. It wasn't some rogue thing they just set up. This was actually something that the government was doing under the Biden administration, and that was due to a specific threat of penetration by Chinese intelligence.
Yeah, and Tulsi Gabbard brought that up today in this hearing before the House Intelligence Committee, alluding to the fact, confirming that, in her words, every government-issued device, phone, does have Signal already downloaded as an app on it. Those were Tulsi Gabbard's words here. Let's get back to the classification question, because I'm learning this. I'm learning each agency within the federal government, they can determine what they think is classified and not. And so things go under classification and declassification review. You heard there my friend Ellie Watson, traveling with Hegseth there from CBS News, asked to no avail, whether or not Hegseth declassified all of this before he put it into the group message here. Now, I want to put this up. Jackie Heinrich has this reporting, Hal. Trump telling her he will ask Hegseth to review whether the contents of the Signal chat should have been classified. Also, she says today, DNI Gabbard testified under oath that information about attack plans by the U.S. or its allies should be classified as top secret. Hegseth has said the contents of the messages, which included launch times and attack sequencing, was not classified. POTUS is now planning to ask Hegseth for a classification review. Trump saying, sure, I'll ask him. I'd certainly ask him to take a look at it. Is that a good idea?
I think that's a very good idea. They should be looking at it. I think Pete Hegseth's in a difficult situation making that determination because he's actually, under the spotlight as a person who may have, who basically under the spotlight with the accusation that he released what was classified information. Although I will say, and you just brought it up, he is the senior member of that department, and as such, he does have declassification authority. Although, if you haven't
successful. There was no harm done because the attack was unbelievably successful that night.
Fareed Zakaria, host of Fareed Zakaria, GPS, is here now. So, Fareed, what does this whole incident reveal about this administration?
Well, it's a great question. Let me just begin by pointing out, Aaron, that we don't know that the attack was successful. Saudi Arabia inflicted these kind of bombing attacks on the Houthis for years and were ultimately not successful in actually defanging them. So, but put that aside for a minute. Look, what the broader issue this reveals is an administration that has kind of contempt for the processes and institutions of the liberal democratic state that the United States has built. It's go into a department if you're Doge, don't bother to learn anything about the process or the procedures, fire everybody. You're at the NIH, just stop all the grants. There have been these elaborate procedures by which scientists get funded. No, stop that all. Go into the courts, and the courts ask you for documentation, for reasons why you're deporting people. And they just don't provide them. They're effectively defying court orders, and the courts and the judges are saying, look, you're not following the normal procedures we do. So this is really, to my mind, the most vivid example of this complete disrespect for the institutions, the norms, the procedures by which the American state, the American democracy has been functioning, because a lot of these people have contempt for all of this. This is, at the end of the day, to them, the deep state. Well, what this reveals is sometimes it's the deep state has deep security procedures for a reason, to protect lives.
I'm also curious, the response around the world, Fareed, has been, and from European allies, rather muted. Obviously, you saw Europeans in this thing called, nobody wants to help them, God forbid, right? They were called pathetic. And that there's more of where that came from, Vance's Munich speech, right? We all know that. And yet, the context is, I don't know if you saw this today, but the EU put a thing out today citing rising global tensions, saying that citizens should stockpile 72 hours worth of food and other essentials in event of an emergency, whether that be a war or an attack, right? This is Europe, and they're being told to do that. I mean, it's sort of, you read that and you pause. In the context of this Signal chat, what are the top echelons of the European government, European national security? What do they really think about this?
So there are two things going on. One, there is a bit of surprise and bewilderment about the callousness towards these security procedures, because the U.S. has always been the gold standard on all this kind of thing. The U.S. has always been the place where if the Secretary of State, let alone the President, goes somewhere, they have to construct a SCIF, a special compartmentalized security booth in which emails, phone conversations take place so that nothing is revealed, because the United States is the only global superpower with military power around the world. So there's always been the sense that the U.S. Does this stuff at the ultimate standard of security. But the larger issue again here is what it revealed, particularly in Vice President Vance's comments, which, really he represents the kind of ideology, if you will, of MAGA, which is that the United States for 80 years has seen itself as the protector of the free world, as the guarantor of the security of the free world. It is at the center of it, right? But what was revealed is that J.D. Vance thinks of it more like we're running a protection racket. And what we need to figure out is if there are more European ships that are being helped than American ships, then why don't we do a shakedown of the Europeans? No president of either party, no vice president for 80 years would have ever said that.
The context of this chat obviously was an attack on Houthis, right, who have been sending missiles into Israel, right? It's all tied with the situation in Gaza. There's a significant development there on the ground which is large crowds of Palestinians in Gaza have been protesting against the war there. And actually, Hamas is the reporting here, Fareed. And this is the second day of that. Now, Hamas says, this does not reflect the Palestinian overall view. They're implying that this is really an Israeli thing, that Israelis are getting this to happen. How do you see it?
I think it's a very important development. I think if it's happening, the United States and everybody involved should encourage it. Look, Hamas has been terrible for Palestinians. Hamas has been one of the most important obstacles to a Palestinian.
Donald Trump's Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth isn't working out all that well. And it started right at the beginning. Right after he was sworn in, there was the midair collision of a passenger jet and an Army helicopter in Washington, D.C., despite the strict and solemn rules of the Defense Department that say no information about deceased service members can be made public until 24 hours after the next of kin has been informed. Pete Hegseth, nevertheless, blurted out to the public the ranks of the 3 helicopter crew members who had just been killed in the crash. Hegseth also blurted out that the crew members had been performing a training flight on a, quote, continuity of government mission. Mr. Hegseth, quote, was later told that he should not have publicly disclosed that it was a continuity of government mission, which involves U.S. officials and military forces practicing how the government would react in the event of an emergency. Just a couple of weeks later, Mr. Hegseth took his first big international trip as defense secretary, went to a big NATO meeting in Europe, and he began the trip by just totally flummoxing not only our allies, but also a lot of Washington, when he again just blurted out that any peace deal in the Russia-Ukraine war would have to include Ukraine giving up lots of its territory and abandoning its bid to join NATO. That caused major blowback for obvious reasons. He was just giving away Ukraine's major bargaining chips even before negotiations had started. When that blowback made its way to him, Pete Hegseth sort of angrily asserted that he had basically...
Kaitlan, I have 2 questions. One on a follow-up on something you just said. But since we have these messages released, and you said that the president has now personally reviewed them, at the chat, at one point, Pete Hegseth wrote, 14-15 strike drones on target, and in all caps, he said, this is when the first bombs will definitely drop. Does the president feel that he was misled by his national security advisors, whoever it was that told him there was no classified information in there, now that he's seen these messages? I've now been asked and answered this question 3 times by the both of you, and I've given you my answer. The president feels the same today as he did yesterday. Okay, Philip. On my follow-up on what you had just said. No, go ahead, Philip. Kaitlan, I'm not taking your follow-up. Philip, go ahead. I have a follow-up on something you just said, though, Caroline. That's Kaitlan, I'm not taking your follow-up. Philip, go ahead. I have called on you. Thank you.
The vice president seemed to express some frustration that Europe wasn't doing more to police waterways in their backyard, noting in that signal thread that 40% of European trade goes through the Suez Canal. Does the president share that opinion and frustration? And then going forward, should the Europeans be responsible for policing that waterway?
Well, the president was asked this question yesterday by the pool in the cabinet room, and he answered this question. He said yes, he believes that Europe has been, as the vice president put it, freeloading on the backs of American taxpayers and off the backs of the United States of America, and he wants to ensure that Europe pays their fair share. He's always been very honest and upfront about that, and I think the vice president shares those concerns with him as well.
And then one more.
Sure.
Enlisted soldiers, sailors, and Marines would face consequences if they shared this type of information inadvertently with a reporter. Can you tell us more why the president is so willing to give Mike Waltz a mulligan here?
Again, I have now been asked and answered the same question using different language multiple times. If anybody has another question, there's a lot of different things going on in the world. We have tariffs possibly being implemented later today. The president is going to talk about that at 4 o'clock this afternoon. Peter.
Caroline, if I can ask you very quickly about the information we've seen, just to set the predicate to all this. Has the president been briefed and physically seen he's seen all the details of the chat as printed by the Atlantic?
I just spoke to the president about it, yes.
Okay. Then let me ask you if I can very quickly. In the chat, Pete Hegseth, the defense secretary, details F-18s, Tomahawks, so some of the weapons that were used. He details the timing involved for this, all of which occurred 31 minutes before, as he says, F-18s would launch. The DoD manual details classified information as significant military plans, saying that is secret, that's classified. So what about, there are no methods, there are no sources, but that's not what determines what's classified. So what is it about what Pete Hegseth wrote that makes you say this is not classified?
Well, it's not just me saying that, Peter. It's the Secretary of Defense himself who is saying this as well. And he put out a very strong statement earlier today listing all of the things that were not included in that message that he sent to the group. And again, this message, there was no classified information transmitted. There were no war plans discussed. Why did The Atlantic downgrade their allegation about war plans to attack plans? They're now playing word games because they know this was sensationalist spin from a reporter who is well known for doing this. We have said all along no war plans were discussed, no classified material was sent. You have the Secretary of Defense saying that. You have the Director of the CIA, the Director of National Intelligence, the FBI Director, all testifying to that under oath, and they should be trusted with that.
To be clear, Americans can make the decision for themselves, but whether is the you said it's not war plans. Would you characterize these as military plans, military operation plans?
I would characterize this messaging thread as a policy discussion, a sensitive policy discussion, surely, amongst high-level cabinet officials and senior staff. And I'm so glad, Peter, that you said the American public can decide for themselves, because I think the American public should decide for themselves based on the outcome of this operation. And what happened in this operation? Terrorists that were allowed to run wild by the Biden administration were killed because of the direction and the determination of this president and his team. And this message also shows, this messaging thread also proved that President Trump has an incredibly dynamic team who is working incredibly hard, flying all over the world to secure world peace and to fix up the foreign policy crises that the previous administration left for this team to inherit.
So to be clear, we all in this room and around the country would agree that we're glad no American service members were harmed, and we're glad that the mission was a success. We'll stipulate that. But the president said that Pete Hegseth said none of this was classified. So given the president has seen it now, and given the president understands that significant military plans are deemed classified as secret, how does the president view none of this, which details times and weapons and more, as being not classified?
I've already been asked and answered this question. The president's thoughts on this remain the same today as they were yesterday,
On what basis,
as well as the Secretary of Defense. This question has been asked and answered. There was no classified material discussed. Jackie.
On what basis I was asking?
Go ahead, Jackie.
Thank you, Caroline. So why aren't launch times on a mission strike classified?
Again, I would defer you to the Secretary of Defense's statement he put out this morning. There were various reasons he listed, things that were not included in that messaging thread that were not classified. And again, going back to the American public, do you trust the Secretary of Defense, who was nominated for this role, voted by the United States Senate into this role, who has served in combat, honorably served our nation in uniform? Or do you trust Jeffrey Goldberg, who is a registered Democrat and an anti-Trump sensationalist reporter? This president and this national security team are putting our national security and the American people first. We are restoring American strength around the world, and the results of this operation speak for themselves.
Putting aside Jeffrey Goldberg, though, just for for American service members who are going to have to carry out these missions in the future, what I guess the message that's coming from the response to all this that we're hearing is that nothing sensitive happened. And I guess the logical conclusion of that is that if these messages had gone out publicly prior to the launch, that wouldn't have been a risk to service members. I don't know that they're comfortable with that. So can you explain, had these messages been published, would the plans have moved forward? Would the launch have still taken off?
What I can tell you is that the president, as the commander-in-chief of our United States Armed Forces, and Secretary Pete Hegseth, who is an incredible man and a warfighter himself, take the lives of our American service members with the utmost responsibility, and they would never do anything intentionally to put their lives at risk. And again, they are working hard on that every single day, and we are protecting our service members while also restoring peace throughout this globe. It's something the previous administration has not done. And I would just add one more point. We are not going to be lectured about national security and American troops by Democrats and the mainstream media who turned the other cheek when the Biden administration, because of their incompetence, left 13 service members dead in Afghanistan, and not a single person in the previous administration was held accountable for that botched withdrawal. Joe Biden said, in fact, it was a great operation. That is despicable. It's unacceptable to this president and this Secretary of Defense. The National Security Advisor has taken responsibility for this inadvertent number being added to the messaging thread. But above all, we take the lives of our troops, safety, security, prosperity around the globe with the utmost seriousness.
Goldberg's intentions, do you believe
Jennifer,
that he
go
would
ahead.
release that to embarrass the administration ahead of the worldwide threats?
Jennifer, go ahead.
Given what you've said about the president's trust in his national security team, can you say definitively that no one will lose their jobs? No one will lose their job at all because of this signal situation?
What I can say definitively is what I just spoke to the president about, and he continues to have confidence in his national security team.
One more, can I ask one more, Karen? On the targets in Yemen on March 15th, can you say were 100% of the targets that were planned for March 15th, were they all destroyed? Because that would be an indication if some of them were moved or they were not all hit, that maybe perhaps some of the enemies were able to get some of the information in that signal.
What I can say about the operation is what the Department of Defense has put out there. I would refer to them for any further operational details. But there have been more than 100 strikes conducted against Houthi targets, and they have hit key Houthi leaders, air defense systems, command and control nodes, headquarters, weapons manufacturing and storage facilities. And these operations will continue until the freedom of navigation in our seas is restored and U.S. shipping can safely transmit without the fear of attack. And again, we believe that this has been a very successful operation thus far, and it will continue until this administration feels it no longer has to, and these terrorists have been taken out, which again is something the previous administration should have done, but they didn't, and now we've inherited this crisis. Stephen.
Thank you, Karoline. I'd like to clarify something about the investigation and also ask about some conservative commentary. On the investigation, Mike Waltz said last night that he had spoken to Elon Musk about figuring out how Jeffrey Goldberg's number got in his phone. You mentioned the NSC and the White House counsel's office investigating. Can you just clarify who is investigating, who's leading that, and also Dave Portnoy, who endorsed President Trump, said today that he thinks that Mike Waltz should leave. Could you respond to that?
Sure. Great respect for Dave Portnoy, but I just answered that previous question from Jennifer. As for your original question about who's looking into the messaging thread, the National Security Council, the White House counsel's office, and also, yes, Elon Musk's team. Elon Musk has offered to put his technical experts on this to figure out how this number was inadvertently added to the chat. Again, to take responsibility and ensure this can never happen again.
Number 6. What do Signal and Elon Musk have in common? Musk, the man who was momentarily the richest man in the world, is also a huge fan of Signal. On the 7th of January 2021, he tweeted a very detailed, in-depth message about his thoughts regarding Signal. He said, "Use Signal." Funny story though, many people took his words to the next level and decided to buy Signal stocks. Except, as we mentioned already, they're a non-profit, so you can't buy shares. What people bought instead was shares of Signal Advance, a company who manufactures various detection devices in the medical field. They certainly didn't complain though, because prior to the misleading tweet, shares of Signal Advance had never gone above 60 cents. But on January 7th, stocks closed at $3.76. On the 8th of January, it was $7.19. And then another day later, pushed the closing price to $38.70. That's a 6,350% increase over 3 days. Once the hype died down and the truth was revealed, it did go back down to $12 a share, and at the time of writing this script, it was at $5.55. Number 7. Which chat service...
This video is a short PSA about Signal usernames. Last year, Signal, an end-to-end encrypted messenger, introduced usernames, which allows people to now connect on the platform without having to give their phone number out. And it lets users keep their phone number entirely hidden on the platform. It's a great new privacy feature, but unfortunately not enough people know about it. Many mistake it with their profile name, and understanding how to share your username or search for others by theirs can be confusing. confusing. I love the idea of us moving away from using our cell numbers as our unique identifiers. So I wanted to help make this transition to usernames as easy as possible for people. In this short video, I'll explain what a username is, how to set it up, how to find others via their username, and what the privacy benefits and limitations are of this new feature. Let's start with understanding what your Signal username is. As I said, many confuse usernames with profile names. These are not the same thing. Your profile name is the name that shows up in chats that people can see when they click on your profile, whereas your username is not public. Even the people you're connected with can't see yours. So what's the point of a username then? Well, it's an identifier that people can search for instead of you having to give them your phone number. Essentially, it's just a tool used for connection. But others won't actually see your username once they've added you as a contact. They will only see what your public profile name is. So this feature is something you'll seldom use, only when you first connect
I have two
with
questions.
people.
One on a
Now,
follow-up
how
on
do you
something you
set
just
up
said.
your
But
Signal
since we have these
username?
messages
First,
released,
go
and
to
you
your
said that the president has now personally reviewed them. At the chat, at one point, Pete Hegseth wrote 14-15 strike drones on target, and in all caps, he said, "This is when the first bombs will definitely drop." Does the president feel that he was misled by his national security advisors, whoever it was that told him there was no classified information in there, now that he's seen these messages?
I've now been asked and answered this question 3 times by the both of you, and I've given you my answer. The president feels the same today as he did yesterday.
Okay,
Philip.
and on my follow-up on what you had
No,
just said.
go ahead, Philip.
Caitlin,
I'm not taking your follow-up. Philip, go
I have
ahead.
a follow-up on something you just said, though, Caroline. That's
Caitlin,
regarding
I'm not
Jeffrey
taking
Goldsberg.
your follow-up. Philip, go ahead. I have called on you.
The
Thank you.
Vice President seemed to express some frustration that Europe wasn't doing more to police waterways in their backyard, noting in that Signal thread that 40% of European trade goes through the Suez Canal. Does the President share that opinion and frustration? And then going forward, should the Europeans be responsible for policing that waterway?
Well, the president was asked this question yesterday by the pool in the cabinet room, and he answered this question. He said yes, he believes that Europe has been, as the vice president put it, freeloading on the backs of American taxpayers and off the backs of the United States of America, and he wants to ensure that Europe pays their fair share. He's always been very honest and upfront about that.
Situation we should have never had to even think about, should have never happened. And in the Middle East, that's been going on for a lot of years, centuries and centuries. It just keeps going. And we are making a lot of progress, so that's all I can report. But some very, very big talks are going and detailed talks are going on right now on both fronts.
Mr. President, you said that your national security advisor learned a lesson after a reporter.
Excuse me, I didn't make you. Go ahead, please.
Mr. President, the ceasefire agreement that was brokered today allows for third-party countries to help implement the agreement.
Donald Trump has gone head-to-head with a CNN reporter again. This time, the target was Kaitlan Collins.
And this should have been done by Biden years ago. This should have never been allowed to happen. I know he's a friend of yours.
But couldn't Putin just withdraw his
He's a friend of
today?
CNN. That's why nobody watches CNN anymore, because they have no credibility. Okay, who else? Yes, please.
Trump was not impressed with the pushy reporter, and when he did finally get to questions from the press, he made a point to skip over Collins.
Okay. Go ahead, please.
You won the White House in part.
Go ahead, please. Mr. President, you are meeting time with Modi. Yes.
Online commentators were in hysterics with the spectacle. This person said, "She should probably be left out of the pool for a while for not following the Oval Office etiquette." This commentator agreed, saying, "Love how President Trump stands up to fake news. He's not afraid to call out their biased reporting and interrupting tactics, keeping them in check, one fiery response at a time." But Trump wasn't done. The president doubled down, blasting CNN.
Mr. President, you won the White House in part because of high inflation. If your tariffs make prices go up...
Excuse me, we haven't asked you to speak yet, please. Right?
And he still wasn't done. Trump even managed to take a swipe at Collins during a rant about Mitch McConnell.
RFK Jr. as the next health secretary, citing conspiracy theories. What's your reaction to that?
Well, I feel sorry for Mitch. And I was one of the people that he wanted to go to the end and he wanted to stay leader. He's not equipped mentally. He wasn't equipped
10 years ago mentally, in my opinion. He'd let the Republican Party go to hell. If I didn't come along, the Republican Party wouldn't even exist right now. Mitch McConnell never really had it. He had an ability to raise money because of his position as leader, which anybody could do. You could do it even, and that's saying a lot.
This was not the first time Trump and Collins had a face-off. The pair have had a history of tension.
But that's the question that investigators have, I think, is why you held on to those documents when you knew the federal government was seeking them and then had given you a subpoena to return them.
Are you ready? Are you ready? Can I talk?
Yeah, what's
you
the
mind?
answer?
Do you mind?
I would like for you to answer the question.
Okay, it's very simple to answer.
That's why I asked it.
It's very simple to, you're a nasty person, I'll tell you.
And it's not only Trump who is shutting down Collins and her mainstream media counterparts. Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt gave a stark warning to Collins as well.
Which White House official made the decision to bar the AP reporter from the Oval Office and the diplomatic reception room last night?
Well, first of all, let me just set the record straight. It is a privilege to cover this White House. It's a privilege to be the White House press secretary. And nobody has the right to go into the Oval Office and ask the President of the United States questions. That's an invitation that is given. And there are hundreds of outlets on this campus, many of you in this room who don't have the privilege of being part of that pool every single day and getting to ask the President questions. We reserve the right to decide who gets to go into the Oval Office, and you all have credentials to be here, including the Associated Press, who is in this briefing room today.
But isn't it retaliatory in nature is the argument, because the reason that the AP was barred, which they said was because they're not using the phrase Gulf of America, they're using Gulf of Mexico in line with their standards. And so the question here is this setting a precedent that this White House will retaliate against reporters who don't use the language that you guys believe reporters should use? And how does that align with the First Amendment commitment that you were just talking about?
I was very upfront in my briefing on day one that if we feel that there are lies being pushed by outlets in this room, we are going to hold those lies accountable. And it is a fact that the body of water off the coast of Louisiana is called the Gulf of America. And I'm not sure why news outlets don't want to call it that, but that is what it is.
This commentator doubled down on Leavitt's warning, saying, "You need some lessons in protocol and probably a manners class. Being in the Oval Office is privilege. I hope your disrespect of our president is not overlooked and there are consequences. CNN must not support your insubordination."
Let's bring in the White House Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt right now. We saw some of your posts, Ms. Press Secretary. Thanks so much for joining us. The coordination was really noteworthy to see that. I never remember seeing Christopher Wray out and about at a crime location. Could you bring us behind the scenes? How long this has been in the works? What could you add to what we just heard?
Absolutely. First of all, I want to commend President Trump and our great Attorney General Pam Bondi, our FBI Director Kash Patel, and Tom Homan. This is what happens when you have competent federal leadership at the top working with state and local law enforcement on the ground to put bad guys in jail. And this is a directive that has come from President Trump here at the White House to law enforcement agencies across the country. This president has your back, and he is going to support you as you pursue illegal immigrants and you pursue violent criminals in American communities. This individual who they arrested today was a national ringleader of the brutal MS-13 gang, a gang that the previous administration, Joe Biden and his cabinet and his team allowed to infiltrate in our country. And now President Trump and his team are cleaning up that mess by arresting these individuals. And this took place 30 miles outside of Washington, D.C., where you have politicians and mainstream media journalists who live in this city and who have derailed against the president and his crackdown on illegal immigration and on violent crime. They should be grateful that monsters like this are no longer going to be living in their communities thanks to the great leadership of President Trump and everybody who was on the ground. They were working throughout the night, no sleep for this team, to make the lives of the American people safer.
Karoline, I think it's important to note, too, with this big operation, there were no leaks. I mean, that's incredible that there was no leaks in there, but also the point was made that the flights will continue. And this guy was in the country illegally, I think from El Salvador. Can we anticipate him being loaded up on a plane real soon?
We are going to continue with the mass deportation campaign that President Trump promised the American public. I understand that a radical judge at the appeals court has denied the president and our legal team in the case against the Alien Enemies Act, but we are going to continue to forge ahead in the courts. And think about how insane it is that we have a Democrat Party and we have Democrat activists who are judges in our judicial branch who are fighting against this administration from deporting these heinous individuals. If we have a country where the president of the United States, where the commander-in-chief cannot deport foreign terrorists and illegal aliens, the American people are in a lot of trouble. So we're going to continue to fight to do what's right for law-abiding American citizens. We will forge ahead in that court case. But yes, we will comply with the court's orders. We will fight in court. But we are going to continue to deport illegal immigrants from the interior of our country.
You know, Karoline, one of the things about Donald Trump is before he was president, he was on TV a lot, and he was a great, a great presenter, and he was a really good producer as well. And it seems like this entire administration so far has been really good at getting the images out, the optics of what is going on. We saw early on some of the raids. We saw Kristi Noem yesterday in El Salvador. We're seeing this going on. Ultimately, the visual message, the optical message to the people who are thinking about coming into the country is, why bother? They're going to catch me. I'm going to wind up on a plane or in that hellhole in El Salvador.
That's right. The president has made it very clear to people around the world, do not come to the United States illegally. And if you do, you will face consequences for that. And not only are we taking action on the ground, we are sending a strong message with these visuals to the rest of the world, and it's having an impact. Look at illegal migration through the Darien Gap. There has been a 99% decrease. Look at the gotaways at our southern border, 77 a day. That's an astronomical decrease from the previous administration. There were thousands of people coming to the border every single day under the previous administration.
Right.
And it just proves that everybody who said we needed a border bill was wrong. We just needed a president who actually wanted to enforce our nation's immigration
Karoline,
laws.
we only have a minute left, but right now we know the pattern. They're going to pound you on the Signal story all day. How do you handle that? Meanwhile, there's so many other things to talk about.
The president and our entire team have been incredibly transparent. We have taken every question under the sun about this story, and the National Security Advisor has taken responsibility for this mistake. We are looking into it to ensure it can never happen again, and we're going to continue doing the business of the American people that they elected this President Trump to do, which includes removing illegal criminals from our communities, which includes America First trade policies. Yesterday, the president announced a 25% tariff on foreign auto vehicles and auto parts. This is huge for our auto industry. In fact, the United Auto Workers Union, Sean Fain, the president, came out this morning and applauded the president for this exceptional policy. More jobs, more investments, more money coming back to America. We are going to continue to focus on that.
Well, today is definitely a big win for the administration and the country.
That's
a
right.
dirtbag off the street that was criminalizing and harming other Americans. Karoline Leavitt, we appreciate you a lot.
Thanks, guys.
I'm Steve Doocy.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.
You smell Chinese.
Thank you for being here. We have been out since about 4:30 this morning. The great men and women of law enforcement have been working on this operation for days and days and probably weeks. Early this morning, one of the top leaders of MS-13 was apprehended. He was the leader for the East Coast, one of the top 3 in the entire country. Right here in Virginia, living half an hour outside of Washington, D.C. He is an illegal alien from El Salvador, and he will not be living in our country much longer. He's in custody this morning. One of the top leaders right here near our nation's capital. I just cannot thank Governor Youngkin enough for his leadership in this effort. This has been a joint effort with state and local agencies. FBI Director Patel, thank you so much. Terry Cole, Virginia Secretary of Public Safety, our U.S. Attorney, Eric Siebert, DHS Secretary Noem, of course, who is in El Salvador, the home country currently of our illegal alien. DEA Acting Director Maltz, thank you. Our U.S. Marshals Service, ATF, all of the members of our task force who have been working tirelessly. We were out at that scene this morning, and what we saw was second to none. Teamwork, everyone working together. You know, someone made a great point. No egos. It was a team. You could not tell who was with what agency. Everyone was working as a team. And the most important thing, all of our agents were safe this morning, all of our law enforcement officers, and the bad guy is in jail. That's what matters. That's what happened. America is safer today because of one of the top domestic terrorists in MS-13. He is off the streets. This has been an ongoing directive of President Trump. His directive to me when I became Attorney General of the United States was very simple. Keep America safe. Make America safe again. And that's what these men and women have been doing tirelessly every single day since Donald Trump took office. We want to make our streets safer. We want to make our schools safer. We want to make your neighborhood safer. This guy was living in a neighborhood right around you. No longer, thanks to the great men and women of law enforcement. This task force that we have created is remarkable, using incredible technology that we will not discuss to catch and apprehend these horrible, violent, worst of the worst criminals. MS-13, they are organized, they are violent, they are committing homicides throughout our country. They are one of the most dangerous gangs in our country, and we are going to fight until they are completely dismantled. What I want to do, I want to have other governors, other law enforcement officers come.
And buckle up, a Fox News alert. President Trump praising his team after the arrest of a top leader of MS-13.
All right, yeah, look at this. Man, is this live?
It was yesterday.
Oh, sorry. Okay. We have exclusive coverage of the operation. Our cameras were rolling as AG Pam Bondi and FBI Director Kash Patel joined agents in the early morning takedown.
And David Spunt is live in Virginia, Manassas, Virginia, with all the details. Hi, David.
You were there.
Good morning to you. I was very early morning. This happened around 6 o'clock in the morning in Woodbridge, Virginia. A 24-year-old top MS-13 leader, actually the top leader on the East Coast, was taken down into custody by the FBI. This was a DOJ FBI operation together along with Virginia State Police, ICE, and other different agencies. We have some video of this operation going down. The FBI director and attorney general watched this on a monitor from off-site, but they were watching in real time in cameras that were planted in the area to see this person get taken down. As far as the name is concerned, we're not able to release the name right now until this person has their first appearance, but we're told this person is a 24-year-old male from El Salvador living here in a residential apartment complex in Woodbridge, Virginia. Got a knock on the door from SWAT teams early this morning, a little bit before 6 o'clock in the morning. He is now in custody. Here's some sound from our exclusive interview with the FBI Director and Attorney General.
First reaction is all of our law enforcement officers are safe. That was the number one thing. They're safe. They executed a clean, safe operation, and the bad guy's in custody. And thanks to the FBI, we got one of the worst of MS-13 off the streets this morning.
We were able to be out here in force to show the American people, to be here in person, that this means a lot to her and the mission. Safety is our primary concern of these communities, and we effectuated that today.
Separately, he's one of the top 3 leaders in the country. Again, remarkable as he's just 24 years old. There's a press conference that begins with the FBI Director Kash Patel, Attorney General Pam Bondi, and Virginia Governor Glenn Youngkin coming up in just a few moments. We're told there's a heavy coordination between Virginia and the FBI and Department of